Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together we are the Bills guys. Once again, this is the Air Raid Hour presented by the Cover One Sports Network. And Dave, the Buffalo Bills, after a week, they finally given us something to talk about.
Yeah. Blockbuster signing today, right? With a guy that we've been kind of harsh on over the years, I would say, and previewing a lot of Jets games. But hey, competition's never a bad thing. We've brought in former Jets before, the likes of Spencer Long. So, yeah, Greg Van Roten in the mix now.
So, for those of you who maybe don't have, social media or Twitter or Buffalo Bills news alerts. And this is the first time you're hearing it. The Buffalo Bills have made a free agent signing today in interior offensive lineman Greg Van Roten. He was serviceable in his time in Carolina. The Buffalo Bills made a play for him 2 years ago. He chose to go to the New York Jets, played the last 2 years with the New York Jets. I think the word used to describe his play with the New York Jets was probably bad. Like he was objectively bad in New York. Brian Winters vibes this signing is giving me. So hopefully he doesn't need to ever have to see the field for the Buffalo Bills. But we have Aaron Cromer. He's a guy who started games in this league. That means something. So any more thoughts on this signing, Dave?
No, I mean, he's graded out better as a run blocker in his career than a pass blocker. He's got experience on both sides, left guard and right guard. He's started, double digit games between Carolina and the Jets for 4 seasons in a row. So he does bring that experience into the room, right? So you've got already your kind of vet that you brought in to start in Roger Saffold. You brought in David Quesenberry. And you're kind of rounding out this room, I think, with some veterans now that you kind of have a mix of younger guys with Doyle and Spencer Brown, right? And Tenuta is in the room now as well. So, it's competition, right? At this point, do I expect him to kind of unseat someone like Cody Ford for a possible role in the team? Probably not. But it's insurance at this point in the year, and it's cheap insurance. So I can understand why they did it.
Yeah, looking at the Buffalo Bills offensive line, a couple of people I mentioned in the comment section now, like this is a no new signing. And that's why this tweet sort of took me by surprise a little bit. And it's from former Buffalo Bills offensive lineman and current CBS analyst Ross Tucker. I'm going to put this tweet up here. So Adam Schefter announced the Buffalo Bills signing of Greg Van Roten to a 1-year contract. And Ross Tucker, this is Ross Tucker's tweet, which took me a little bit by surprise. He said, Bills' second team offensive line might be better than a few teams' starters. And I thought that was, I think that might be going a little too far, even for Ross Tucker. I mean, our first team is really solid from left to right. Deion Dawkins, Roger Saffold, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, Spencer Brown. But then if you were to roll out the second unit, you mentioned some of these names. From left to right, it would be Tommy Doyle, Greg Van Roten, Greg Manx, Cody Ford, and David Quesenberry. I don't know. Maybe I'm not taking enough of a look around the entire league and looking at the depth of some teams, but I don't know if those 5 guys starting an offensive line, even with like the 32nd best offensive line in the NFL, would match up quite with that. I don't know if there's enough talent there on the second string.
There isn't, but this is something, this is a philosophy the Bills are going towards that I appreciate, and I've talked about on this show a number of times, is I want my starters to kind of be it's fine if the starters have versatility, but I would rather them be really good at one position than have versatility and be average at multiple positions. The depth, on the other hand, is the opposite. I like when the backups have that versatility. Quesenberry, left side, right side. Van Roten now left side, right side guard flex. Cody Ford has some guard tackle flexibility, as bad as he has been right there. And Tommy Doyle has some left tackle, right tackle flexibility as well. So the reserves have that flexibility and versatility, which I like. And so I think now you've kind of rounded out the interior offensive line with some good versatility, because yes, Cody Ford could have slotted in at left guard or right guard, but now you really do kind of have that true left guard, right guard swing depth, at least. Do I think Greg Van Roten's going to make the 53-man roster? I don't know. Probably too early to say. He's probably on the outside looking in right now, but if the Bills value that versatility on the depth. So I appreciate that. That's it's fine with me.
Yeah, I mean, versatility all along this offensive line. Ryan Bates is likely your backup center, right? And then a guy like David Quessenberry or Cody Ford could slip into that guard spot if something were to happen to Mitch Morse. I've said it before on the show. I think David Quessenberry could play left tackle, left guard, or right tackle. I think he's our most valuable backup that we have on this football team. And then Cody Ford even's got that right guard, right tackle. And you mentioned Van Roten, left guard, right guard. The only position where I'm a little bit worried is the center depth, right? It's Mitch Morse. Then it's Ryan Bates, who you now have to move multiple guys around. Then it's Greg Manx, and then it's question mark. Now, Ike Butker has taken snaps there before, but he's likely to miss the start of the season. And that's why when I was looking over offensive line today, I'm looking at some of these depth guys. Bobby Hart, Luke Tenuta, they're tackles. Ike Butker, I mentioned, is going to start the year probably on the PUP list. Jacob Capra is a guard. Then you got these guys like Alec Anderson, Tanner Owen, Derek Kerstetter, some of these UDFA guys. And I was looking at the three of them, and the one that really stands out the most, and I know I mentioned this right after the draft, is the signing of UDFA Kerstetter from Texas.
Yep.
This is a guy who started 8 games at center at Texas. He started all over the offensive line at Texas, starting games at right tackle, left guard, right guard, and center. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Aaron Bates. I pulled up his SIS scouting reports. What are his strengths? He's a pretty decent mover at 6'5", 305. Gets to the second level, has good footwork, position flexible. All of those things sound like Aaron Cromer traits, things that Aaron Cromer would want from an offensive lineman. But then I look at his weaknesses: finishing run blocks, power at the point of attack, punch and hand quickness, all things where an NFL weight room could really help him round out and turn some of those weaknesses into strengths. And he sort of reminds me a little bit, looking at the scouting report, looking at his stature, 6'5", 305, we could have another maybe Ryan Bates on our hands. So one of the things that I look forward to when we get into mandatory minicamp this week, and when we get into training camp and actually start to get to see some of the depth charts, I wonder who's going to be the third team center. And I wonder if it's going to be Derek Kerstetter, and if this guy maybe has a chance at making the 53-man roster. So that is something to keep an eye out. So my sleeper going into training camp this year might be Derek Kerstetter out of Texas. You got any thoughts on that one? Any thoughts on that hot take?
No, I don't. I think it's a hot take, but I also think that you've backed it up with some pretty good logic and some evidence, which you typically do. And the fact is like, if you're Kerstetter, you're coming into a situation with Aaron Cromer, and honestly, with the Bills, that probably gives you the best chance to succeed in the NFL, right? Probably worst case scenario, he's on the practice squad. He's still got Aaron Cromer coaching him, and he's still got a chance to be in the room with one of the best offensive line coaches in the league as he kind of develops his traits, gets into one of the best training facilities and weight rooms in the league as well, to kind of work on some of those things that you mentioned are some of his weaknesses, and not necessarily will become strengths, but maybe it become more, less of weaknesses, more just average kind of traits. So, which is fine, right? If you've got average traits paired with some strong traits, you're probably going to last in this league. So we will see how that pans out. But no, I think that's a nice June hot take for you, right?
John V coming in with a comment. He says Butker with Achilles takes typically a year to heal. Maybe Thanksgiving availability. Yeah, I don't have high hopes for Ike Butker really being much of a contributor at all this season. I think even when he comes back, it'll take a while. I know he signed that 1-year deal. I think it's more he's just comfortable with the Bills, the training staff, who really was going to sign him. He's a nice, guy to have in your back pocket late in the year if injuries do take a toll. But I'm not like penciling Ike Butker in as one of our, 8 on the 53-man roster or 10. I think it's going to take a while for him to get back. There's a chance I don't think he sees a snap at all. So availability is going to be a concern with Ike Butker. But availability is not a concern with our 2 special guests today, which we're about to bring on from the original Bills Mafia Buffalo fan base, podcast hosts, Madden play-by-play broadcasters extraordinaire. We have with us this evening Justus General and Jake Jordan. How are you doing this evening, gentlemen?
I'm doing great, man. As Justus is on brand with his mic still being muted.
I'm doing awesome, guys. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
Yeah. Before we get started tonight, the topic of tonight's show, you can read it in the description, is we're going to be going through a couple of things, giving some bold predictions for the 2022 season and in a couple of our topics beyond the 2022 season. So as we roll along, as always, in the comment section, let us know your thoughts as we go along with some of these various different topics today, making some of our 2022 bold predictions. And as we roll along, feel free to throw out some topics of your own, and we'll sort of just, play it fast and loose tonight. And if we got some good topics in the comment section, we'll roll through some of the topics in the comment section as well. But before we get started tonight, gentlemen, I know me and Dave had this problem when we switched over from Buffalo Fanatics to Cover One. We still, even like as recently as last week, had someone like in the comment section say like, hey, to see that you guys are still on the internet, still, making podcasts, creating content. Nice to have finally found you. So I want to give you guys a chance because I know you guys recently made a switch. You switched networks over to the Buffalo fan base. So let people know what content you're creating, where they can find you. Because maybe some people, I'm sure we had some crossovers back when you were with your previous network that might maybe not have found you yet because they don't have Twitter or Facebook or something like that. So Justus, where can we find your content and stuff, man?
No, you guys are absolutely right. There's been definitely that situation where people are like, oh, right there you guys are. So definitely have had that. But we're just, again, as Steve said, it's the original Bills Mafia Buffalo fan base. So you can find us everywhere at Buffalo fan base. That's FAM, M as in Mary, fan base. And man, we got some really, really, really big plans. We do podcasting, we have live shows, we got, oh man, I ain't gonna say it. It's a Mafia Sports Report production, so I'm not gonna say. I'm gonna let him do the announcement. But we got something big coming pretty soon. Again, me and Jake do the Madden sports broadcast or whatever.
Madden cast.
I was thinking like, you know what? I bet there's a certain amount of weeks until the start of the regular season. And when I had the idea, there was 17 weeks of the regular. I was like, perfect. So it's like, we'll do 1 week until every, 1 week a game until, week one of the regular season, give people something to do on Sundays at 1 p.m. And then Jake went crazy and he just put the production together and it became a really, really big success. A lot of people really, really like it. So, that's a little bit about us. But I mean, again, it's, never mind. I'm not going to say anything.
Dude, I love your videos too, man. If you guys don't know, Justus puts out really nice video cut-ups and things like that online as well.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, they're really good, really well done.
I'm in the shadows.
He just got back into it.
You two are the only two who could get me to sit down and watch people playing video games. Like I've never been into sort of
we don't play
video game stuff, but I enjoyed sitting down and watching the Buffalo Bills curb stomp the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. That game. That was a shellacking. I haven't caught this week's game yet, but I did really enjoy.
It's the best one, man. It's the best one. And like we could say that, and I'm not just saying that every week, like to be like, no, this is the next best one. Like, when you're calling a game, you want it to be close because you want it to be a good game. And like calling a blowout as a Bills fan, it feels nice, but like seeing a close game, dude, that Dolphins game that we just called this way, oh man, that was awesome.
That was a great game.
I couldn't have chalked it up any better. Of course, we don't know what happens when it gets. I have my girlfriend. She sends me each of the games on flash drive. She gets it for me, so I don't know the final score, and it's always a surprise. I love it.
Nice. That is pretty awesome.
So we commentate it and go into it. We have no prior knowledge, and we just commentate based on.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's like almost live action.
All right, let's hop into our first segment for today. And our first segment is actually going to be about the Tavon Austin signing. So last week, the Buffalo Bills went out and signed former first-round pick, big-name college football superstar, sort of hasn't quite had the NFL career that I think a lot of people imagine when he was taken by the Rams. But the Buffalo Bills signed Tavon Austin. Again, kind of like Greg Grand Roten, it's sort of like maybe like a little bit of a no-news signing, but I want your guys' opinion. What do you think Tavon Austin's path is to the Buffalo Bills roster? Justus, I'll start with you.
Well, I just looking at the Bills, receiving rotation, there's a ton of talent there. I mean, if you're looking at maybe making a roster, you're not beating out anyone from Stephon Diggs to Khalil Shakir. So that leaves you one, maybe two spots. I think Kumaro is probably definitely getting one of those spots. And I think you can hide Hodgins and Stevenson on the practice squad for another season. So I don't see it happening in terms of, making it on the receiving end. But he has had some experience with returning. It hasn't been much as of late in neither regard, punt returning nor kick returning. So we'll see what happens with that. But if maybe he's able to find a spark there and get something going. I mean, we don't have a solidified punt or kick returner at this moment. They have Micah Hyde, fielding punts back there just to make sure the offense, maintain possession of the football. So I think that, if he can maybe make noise there, like I said, at returner, maybe it might work out for him.
Jake, what do you think? Do you think there's a path to this roster for Tavon Austin?
Yeah, it's a very slim one. Justus already went into it. I think that really Tavon Austin, as people are bringing up, kind of being one of those no news signings, is kind of just like, yeah, I think the return man position is kind of that one spot that's like, all right, it's kind of up for grabs. You've got McKenzie, you've got Stevenson, but it's like this is just a guy that they're really bringing in, I believe, not to really contribute much as a technical wide receiver, but just like, let's see what he can do in the return man game. And I think his upside is probably a little bit more if he's going to be on special teams and be one of those guys, whereas you've seen in the past that they have used those guys that are technically named wide receivers still in the offense. We saw when Andre Roberts was the return man, they did put him in at sets at wide receiver, and it wasn't really pretty, but they still had him in there. And I think Tavon Austin might have a little bit more of an upside. So I think that his thing might be if he can secure that return man position and kind of be the guy that just be above average and just secure the ball, be maybe a reliable option, that maybe that's his one way really into getting it. But I think, again, this could be a camp body to just bringing in competition, as we know the Bills always do.
Yeah, I think you guys are both spot on there with if he can secure the punt return job, that's probably his path to the roster. Kick return, I could kick return in the NFL these days. Like, kick returning is irrelevant in today's National Football League. I might be a little hyperbolic there, but punt returning is the key thing, the key element that the Buffalo Bills are looking to fix from last season. And if he can make the team as the punt returner, I'm not saying you're cutting Khalil Shakir, but on game day, you have decisions to make. So maybe Tavon Austin is active on game day because he wins the punt returning job. And Khalil Shakir, who everyone's trying to divvy up 30, 35 targets for this season, finds himself on the inactive list. And then because Tavon Austin is on the game day roster, he maybe gets some of those touches that people thought would go to Khalil Shakir. So that is one path that I can see for him. Dave, do you see any other path for Tavon Austin to possibly make this roster?
No, I mean, this isn't an Andre Roberts situation where you have an all-pro kick and punt returner guy doing both kick and punt returners and is super proficient at it, that you're willing to have a roster spot dedicated for that, right? Knowing that he's really not going to bring much to you in the receiving game. In the drought era, Bills fans would have overreacted to this signing, no doubt, right? Like, they would have been like, oh, Tavon Austin, former first-round pick, he's going to revive his career with the Bills, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think we're past that now, right? And we can recognize this signing for what it is. The Bills weren't afraid to bring in guys like Brandon Powell and other vets like that last year to kind of add
one that got away
won a Super Bowl into the mix. But yeah, like Justus used the right word, right? It would be a spark, right? If he can bring a spark to that return game, that's all you're looking for, because it is unsettled. That is an unsettled area on a roster with very few unsettled areas. So I do view it like that, but I also kind of, I look across his career, he's had 25 fumbles, right? And so it's not like ball security is necessarily, no, some of that's on the receiving end too, but like 25 fumbles for a guy who's not really been a full-time player really his entire career, it is a lot. And so, one of the things we've always had an issue with guys like Isaiah McKenzie back there, or even Marquez Stevenson a bit last year, was the ball security. So Bills really need to find someone who can secure punts. Like you said, Steve, kick returning is whatever. You just hate to use two different roster spots for a kick returner and a punt returner. If anything, your kick returner can be someone who is going to be on the roster contributing in another way. And then, yes, maybe the punt returner is someone else, but that's really it, I think.
Matt716 with a great comment here. He says, Crowder, McKenzie, Shakir injured, ? And I think that's a great point, because if we get into August or early September and, knock on wood, something happens to Jamison Crowder, something happens to Isaiah McKenzie, something happens to Khalil Shakir, all of a sudden there very much is a possible roster spot available. And instead of having to go with Marquez Stevenson, who's looked shaky through OTAs, you have a veteran presence there in Tavon Austin, who now knows your playbook as well. He's not just someone you're signing off the street. Like, who was it a couple years ago? Marcus Thigpen, we got off the street. That actually worked out, but you're not just bringing a guy off the street and hoping for the best. He's actually at least a little bit familiar.
Brandon Tate was a familiar one.
Just you got something wrong there?
Are we speaking of if all three of them get injured, or like?
I think he's saying if any one of those three get injured.
Okay.
I think is where he's going for. I mean, let's hope all three of those guys.
That's a doomsday scenario right there.
It was interesting because the way he phrased it, it was like, well, if one of them get injured, I kind of expect one of the other two to step up and to that degree. True. And I think that's where you would have maybe like a Hodgins, maybe take a come up off the press or something like that. So, and I mean, I don't really know, but I kind of trust Crowder, Shakir, McKenzie more than Tavon Austin right now,
Okay. Yeah, it looks like Matt was saying Shakir is injured now.
Yeah, he actually is. He's been sitting out. He's been sitting out of OTA practices with like a knee contusion of some kind, I believe. But I don't think it's too serious. I think he should be ready
freshman season.
For I'm sure he'll be ready for training camp. I don't think it's anything to worry about just quite yet. But Tavon Austin, probably one of the more prolific college players to ever, suit up for the Buffalo Bills. He was part of that West Virginia offense. I know Noel Devine was there, Steve Slayton, Pat White. That was a West Virginia team under Rich Rod that was, the stars of college football in the decade that they were sort of had their prominence. So a fun little question here for you guys. Who is your favorite college football athlete of all time? Jake, I'm going to start with you. Who's your favorite? Is it going to be a UCF guy? You going to drop a UCF one on us?
Well, I mean, you guys should know. Literally in my notes on the screen right now, it says Gabe Davis. Duh. Like, I go to war for him, but not just that. Like, there's a ton of players that were on that team that I really liked. I could have said Mackenzie Milton as well if you wanted to go with the quarterback. I could go with those Gators teams with Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow, that was kind of my introduction into college football, being down here in Florida, and that's when it was at its all-time high. But yeah, I'm gonna have to say, I'm gonna have to go with Gabe Davis, because not only was he on the team when I first came into college, and I watched them go undefeated 2 seasons in a row, and then he gets drafted to my favorite NFL team. I mean, it's just been fun from day one watching Gabe Davis. So for me, that's my number one.
Come true.
Yeah, that's my guy.
I think a lot of times nostalgia or rooting interest play into sort of who like your favorite athlete of all time is. So in the comment section, feel free, whoever your favorite college athlete was of all time, at least in terms of football, let us know in the comment section. And Justus, who is your favorite college football player of all time?
That Pat White brought me back, man. Those good days, man. So honestly, my guy is a little bit from that era, and I don't know if this guy was my favorite, but this guy is the one that really made me fall in love with like Ohio State, who's my favorite college football team. That's Troy Smith, quarterback.
I like that one.
Heisman Trophy winner. He was awesome. I loved watching him play. Made me want to be the Ohio State quarterback, and then I turned out to be a huge, gigantic person and couldn't play quarterback. So, but yeah, I'll go Troy Smith. Also, Reggie Bush was up there. Guys like that. Yeah, man. I those guys kind of made you fall in love with college football, man. Archie Manning. Oh, wow.
Archie Manning.
Billy Williams comes in and says Thurman Thomas. That must have been absolutely electric to watch Thurman at Oklahoma State, like when it was going down. Because
and Barry Sanders, right? Barry Sanders behind him.
Yeah, I believe that they were. Yeah, like they might have been. They're right around the same time.
Bear Sanders was first, and then Thurman. I think. Yeah.
The only reason Thurman Thomas slipped to the Buffalo Bills was because he tore his ACL, and that was like unheard of back in the day. Players coming back from that. Correct. I'm not 100% sure on what the injury was, but I'm pretty sure he only dropped to the Buffalo Bills because of an injury similar to that in the second round. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, so growing up where I lived near Poughkeepsie, there's not a lot of college football. Like my dad went to Marist. Like there's not college football around me. So like I wasn't a big college football fan until I moved to North Carolina, and college football is huge here in the Southeast. And I remember, I wasn't really didn't have a team I rooted for until I went to NC State, right? And going into Carter Finley Stadium, my freshman year was Phillip Rivers' senior year in college, and the NC State offense was awesome in 2004. But fast forward to 2005, Phillip Rivers is gone. NC State has the number one defense in college football, led by Mario Williams, Manny Lawson, John McCargo. That defensive line for NC State was absolutely nuts. Mario Williams wearing the number 9 in college. That dude was Clowney before Clowney was a thing. I mean, he was an absolute man unit in college. Tackles for loss, 20 plus tackles for loss as a junior in 05, 14 and a half sacks, was the number 1 overall pick for the Texans. And that dude was just a man among boys in college. And it was so fun watching him. It was just a shame that like Phillip Rivers and him in that 2004 offense couldn't overlap for just 1 year with that 2005 defense that was so good, because NC State, got kind of forgotten.
He had mouths to feed. He had to go pro, right?
Yeah. I mean, Corum Robinson, Jericho Cottrell. I mean, he had a lot of good receivers there.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. But yes. I think he might only had like 5 kids at that time. But but look, but Mario Williams, and then the stakeout, right, with Buddy Nixon, trying not let him leave Buffalo and sign him to that big deal. So it's like all kind of came full circle for me when the Bills signed him. It was really awesome for me because he was like my favorite player to watch in college. So yeah, Mario Williams for me, for sure, as an NC State guy.
Some good ones coming in. Rocket Ishmael, Ed Reed. I remember those U teams. Those were fun. Santana Moss, Richard Greenwood. This is a throwback. I honestly forgot about this one, but back in the day, Dom McNabb. That was a fun one at Syracuse. John V says Earl Campbell as well. Who was it? Matt 716 says college football in Western New York. Really kind of blah. I don't disagree with you. I think if I was choosing like for my heart of hearts, I'd go with Drew Willie and Naaman Roosevelt, because those two guys really did it. Them, James Starks, Ernest Jackson, like those are my dudes back when I went to the University of Buffalo in around 2008. But my choice was none other than Vince Young. That 2006 Rose Bowl, they won 41-38 over Reggie Bush and Matt Leinart. 200 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns for Vince Young in that game. Just absolutely incredible. I was convinced he was going to be the greatest NFL player of all time. He's going to end up in this next segment here when we talk about most random Buffalo Bills. So quite the fall for Vince Young. But I mean, that game, I was 16 during that Rose Bowl game. Just absolutely incredible. I think that has a lot to do with it, because I've seen some all-time great performances since then. Joe Burrow comes to mind, but that Vince Young game in that Rose Bowl national championship.
That game was on my birthday.
Oh, was it really? That
and
I
was
an all-timer.
Reggie Bush fan, so I was upset the whole day. After that game, I was so upset because Vince Young just stomped all over my favorite team at the time. It was crazy.
Speaking of this, Tavon Austin, kind of random that he's a Buffalo Bill, and it got me thinking today. And I've been sort of posting this all over our various different social medias here at the Air Raid Hour, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and stuff, sort of reminiscing about some of the most random players to ever suit up for the Buffalo Bills. And in a second, I want to get your guys' most random Buffalo Bill. But before we do, I'm going to run through some of the candidates here. I'm going to start with the quarterbacks. I'm going to put up some images here. We got the preseason barrage of random Buffalo Bills quarterbacks. You got from left to right here, Matt Leinart. That was an epic preseason game to watch Matt Leinart toss the rock around. Cliff Kingsbury, who I quite frankly did not remember until somebody told me. Apparently he played in the preseason game for the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen's quarterback coach, Jordan Palmer, spent an epic 2 preseason games for the Buffalo Bills. There might have even been 1. And then Vince Young was a part of a Bills offseason once as well. Rolling through, you just mentioned Reggie Bush. All 4 of us here on this panel have more career rushing yards for the Buffalo Bills than Reggie Bush's -1. Terrell Owens, Anquan Bolden, Jordan Matthews. That one I completely forgot about until someone reminded me. And then here are some fun ones here. Dean Cain, TV Superman.
That was
Ish Wainwright, the reserve bench player for the Phoenix Suns, was with the Buffalo Bills during training camp. Sean Merriman, that one also still doesn't look normal seeing him in a Bills uniform.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, the only quarterback to ever hoist the Lombardi for the Buffalo Bills, Dan Heller, Canadian actor Gil Bello in the movie Second String. So
love it.
Gentlemen, I'm going to start with you, Justus. You could pick one of these guys or someone different. Who's the most random Buffalo Bill that you've ever seen put on a Bills uniform?
Oh man, those are some good ones. First of all, I want to mention it's kind of weird that Matt Leinart, Vince Young were both Buffalo Bills, and Reggie Bush and Mario Williams, the 1 and 2 picks, were both Buffalo Bills.
The top 3 picks from that draft all played on the Bills.
It was the top 3. Okay, all right.
Yeah, Mario was number 1. I think Bush was number 2, or Vince Young was number 2, and Bush was number 3, or one of them.
Okay,
but all top 3 were on the Bills at some point.
That makes that stat even better. Yes. Okay. Mine is Josh Norman. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just was. I don't know. He was a superstar like a couple of years ago, and then it's just like he just fell off so hard, and then he was a Bill, and it was like, okay, this is odd, but here we are. And he was here for 1 season, and he put us on the century highlight reel by getting absolutely mashed by Derrick Henry, and he left. So Josh Norman is the guy for me.
I like this one here from Matt 716. He's Von Miller.
Yeah.
Still hasn't hit me yet.
Yeah, really.
What are you going with here, Jake, for your most random Buffalo Bill?
Yeah, so you posted that on Twitter, and I saw it, and I was really hoping I wasn't going to go in the comments section and see Dean Cain. I really was hoping, because I have this Buffalo Bills trivia game here that me and Justus used, and one of the questions on there, it blew my mind when I saw it. It was like, what Superman actor played for the Buffalo Bills? And I was like, what? And I flipped it over and it said Dean Cain. So I looked it up and I was like, yeah, Dean Cain, Superman, played for the Bills 1 week in training camp in 1988.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got a knee injury and then was done. And they cut him. It was, that blew my mind when I learned. I was like, what do you mean Dean Cain? I didn't even know Dean Cain played football, to be completely honest with you.
Steve Link comes in and says it's Kingsbury for sure, or Matt Sims maybe. I think the biggest travesty seeing that picture of Jordan Palmer in a Bills uniform was that Chris Sims was never a Buffalo Bill. That might be the real tragedy here. Boobie Dixon, that's a throwback. Mike Tolbert was a good one. Dave, how about you? Most random Buffalo Bill of all time?
Well, I think the most random sort of not make sense signing had to be T.O., right? Tail end of his career. The Bills went 6-10 that year. Didn't make any sense why we signed him. It was purely a PR stunt. But I think Percy Harvin, someone mentioned it. That is so random to me. That dude was an electric playmaker coming out of college from Florida. I mean, Jake probably saw him a ton, right? As a younger guy. And then he was really good for Minnesota for those first 3-4 years of his career, and then kind of didn't really do much with Seattle, and the Bills kind of signed him randomly. And he had that nice touchdown in that opening game against the Colts with Tyrod, if you guys remember, in the Rex Ryan era. And we were just like, whoa, is this guy going to be something? And then he never was anything for the Bills after that. That was his highlight moment for the Bills, was the very first game he played for the Bills. So, Percy Harvin was so random because he was a first round pick, if I recall correctly, for the Vikings. So really random. The Bills find their ways into these first round picks somehow, these random ones. But T.O. probably the most star power random signing. But Percy Harvin's one that someone in the comment section mentioned. That's super random.
I'll tell you what, I would take Percy Harvin back right now to come in and compete for that kick and punt returner job. There was an article when I was looking up Percy Harvin. There was an article. It was 2 years ago. He was looking to make a comeback. It's now 5 years removed since he last played football.
He was doing those workouts in the
he was shredded.
Parking garage or whatever he was running.
This was like right at the beginning, maybe of the pandemic, or right before the pandemic. And I know what the pandemic has done to my body, so I don't know what it's done to Percy's body. But dude was looking shredded 2 years ago. If he's looking to make a comeback, I said we get Percy Harvin right back here in Buffalo to compete with Tavon.
Get that guy on some Excedrin.
For me, it's always going to be Terrell Owens, and again, it's like nostalgia factor. I was at that 2009 Hall of Fame game where they introduced those new throwback jerseys after years and years of the garbage 2000 uniforms, that sort of navy blue and the white with the blue shoulder pads. They released those throwback 1950 Standing Buffalo uniforms. It was that all white that might be the most beautiful I've ever seen a football player in a uniform is T.O. in that Hall of Fame game. Like, just man crush galore. I couldn't take my eyes off of T.O. I still look back at those photographs and I'm just like, man rocked that jersey like I've never seen a human being rock a jersey. It was an absolutely incredible electric scene in Canton, Ohio that night. Jeff Fisher had to ruin it by like faking punts in the preseason and kicking our butts. But, Trent Edwards didn't throw a ball more than 5 yards in the air, but it was still a fun night. I enjoyed it. And T.O., absolutely incredible. I mean, the way people just drooled all over him at training camp and preseason, before games, after games, it was like nothing I had ever seen. It was absolutely incredible.
He's one of the best ever, man. Like you could say what you want about him, but he is like easily a top 5 wide receiver of all time in the NFL.
And you guys, and it's weird because like I saw that, but I know so many people, they're like, my first jersey was the T.O. jersey. Well, it's just like
mine was a Spikes, but my second was an Owens.
Like everybody like had it, and I was just like, wow, like he had such an impact in such a short time.
Just look at that. I mean, the man.
I totally forgot about Anquan Bolden. That is the most
perfect I've ever seen a human being. Apparently, Anquan Bolden played in a preseason game. I had no recollection of it until I saw the picture. I thought he retired before training camp. Apparently, he made it through a game. So kudos to Anquan Bolden for making it through a game with the Bills preseason. Nonetheless,
full game.
A bigger man than Vontae Davis. We can all agree. Anquan Bolden, a bigger man than Vontae Davis. Oh, this is a good one from Claude. I can't believe I didn't remember this one. You guys remember when Larry Centers, the Buffalo Bill, just randomly at the end of his career? That guy was fun because our offense was so bad when he was
like the best receiving like fullback ever. Like, the guy was like just the softest hands for a fullback.
All right, back to the serious stuff, gentlemen, because it's June something, June 13th. So we got to have some serious Bills conversation worked into here. And this topic actually comes from Justus. It was a great idea for sort of a segment here. But your boy Lettuce comes in with a super chat first. So we're going to get to that. He says, hot take, T.O. will have more yards as a Bill than Hill is getting this year in Miami.
Tyreek Hill?
Woo! I think he's throwing a little shade Tyreek's way. Tyreek's putting a lot of pressure on Tua right now. I think he might be putting a little too much pressure.
How many yards does Hill have?
I'm looking it up right now.
He only had like I think it was like 900 and something. I don't even think
the fact that he got close to 1,000 is pretty incredible.
I was about to say Tyreek might not reach that 200 throwing him all season.
Ryan Fitzpatrick completed a 98-yard pass to
Terrell Owens. The Jags. Yeah,
Tua will never do that with Tyreek Hill. I think that.
T.O. had 829 yards.
Yeah, there you go. I knew it wasn't 1,000. Yeah. We would have made a huge deal.
I mean,
we did.
You know what? I'm not mad at that. That might not be
a hot take.
I'm not mad at that take. I'm not mad at it. I'm sitting here thinking T.O. had like 500 yards, honestly.
I honestly, all I remember was the 98-yarder. I remember nothing else from T.O.
He had a good game against Tampa. I remember that. Anyway.
Someone mentioned in the comment section before we move on to the next topic, someone mentioned that we had 2 Duke Williams, one the receiver, one the safety. Yep. We also had 2 Mike Williams, the offensive tackle and the wide receiver. So
that's a random one. Mike Williams, the receiver, who was on Tampa Bay before the Bills. He was a high draft pick too. He's a
long Mike Williams, right? Not the USC Mike Williams.
Yeah, he was a Syracuse guy.
Yep. Niagara Falls High School too, I believe. I believe he was Niagara Falls.
That's a random Buffalo Bill for sure.
All right. So next segment here, gentlemen, player who could potentially be playing in their last season with the Buffalo Bills. So a number of key Buffalo Bills players, Devin Singletary, Dawson Knox, Tremaine Edmunds, Jordan Poyer, they could all possibly be entering their last season. We just paid Von Miller a ton of money. We mortgaged a little bit of our future in order to go out and get that alpha pass rusher in Von Miller. We obviously just paid Josh Allen. So despite what the LA Rams are doing, because we actually did a show a couple weeks ago, showed all the names that they sort of churned because they do lose a ton of guys. And these teams that sign everybody also do lose a ton of guys as well. Some of these guys could be seeing their last season for the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with Devin Singletary. Could possibly be entering his last season as the Buffalo Bills. Jake, do you think this is Devin Singletary's last season with the Buffalo Bills?
So I did choose one. I was like, who is the guy that I think most likely, if there was, they were looking at the roster and like, all right, where can we afford to go? I think Devin Singletary could be that guy that, depending on how they're looking at it, we all kind of know how the Buffalo Bills view the running back position. So with them investing in James Cook, it makes me think that maybe they'll be a little bit more hesitant to invest any kind of maybe significant money into the running back room. We know what they think about Tremaine Edmunds. I mean, they gush over him every single offseason. And, even though we all sit here and we're critical of him, they like the guy. And with Jordan Poyer right now, we're kind of seeing what's going on with that. I think that when they look at, okay, what are focal point positions, some of these guys, I think, probably rank over Devin Singletary when it comes on the priority list. So if I had to choose one, I think, yes, Devin Singletary could be the one on the outs if it came down to having to get rid of one easily.
Justus, what do you think? Do you think Devin Singletary is in his last year with the Buffalo Bills?
No, I don't. I think that Devin Singletary is and has been the best running back that we've seen in Buffalo by a lot for a long time now. Since they let go of Shady, honestly. That first year, there's no way he should have been splitting carries with Frank Gore. I love Frank Gore, Hall of Famer, first, second ballot, somewhere in there. But I mean, top three ever. No, he first ballot Hall of Famer.
He's first ballot. He's
top
first ballot.
Three ever. Top three. Yeah, he's first ballot. So, but still, Singletary should have had those carries. The second year with Moss, they were trying to do the dual back thing. Singletary should have had those carries. And then the third year, they started to realize Singletary should have had those carries toward the end of the year, and he showed you what happens when he gets those carries. Now, with the improved offensive line, with Cromer coming back, with Brady and what's the other Shula, and then also Dorsey, obviously, I think that offense has too many geniuses in the room to not make the run game work. And I think they will. And I think Singletary will reap the benefits of that. And I think you have James Cook there as a third down back. And I still think that Singletary is a top 10 talent in this league. I really do. I think the only thing Devin Singletary doesn't have at a high level is maybe his speed. And his speed isn't bad. It's just not elite. So I really like Devin Singletary. And not only that, but one benefit that has come out of absolutely hiding his talent and not showcasing him to the NFL is that he'll probably be cheap regardless of the year he has this year. Yeah. I think he will not be as expensive as he probably should be, in my opinion. So I think he's going to be one of the guys that stays.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that he should have been getting all those carries that Frank Gore was getting 2 seasons ago. You could make the argument that like Devin Singletary probably should have had a 1,000-yard season by now as a Buffalo Bill. His lack of touches has kept him from getting to that 1,000-yard season. And this year with James Cook maybe in the J. McKissick role and Zach Moss having sort of faded away, we don't really know what we have in Zach Moss. If Devin Singletary gets the bulk of the touches this year, based on the average yards per carry he's gotten, if his workload increases, he should be able to pass that 1,000-yard threshold this season. But then, Dave, that leaves it up to the contract, right? Like if he goes off, he pops off, he has a big season. Can the Buffalo Bills afford to pay a running back?
Well, this is why this question's very interesting, right? Because one of these things is not like the other when it comes to contracts. All the guys outside of Devin Singletary are going to be top dollar for their position or close to top dollar for their position type contracts. I'm not saying they're going to be the highest paid, but they're going to be in the top 5-10 highest paid at their position if you're going to independently look at each of these guys in a vacuum. Dawson Knox will be paid like a top 10 tight end. Tremaine Edmunds, whatever you want to say about him, he's going to be paid like a top 10 linebacker. Jordan Poyer is going to get paid like a top 5 safety, as he should. So, yes, when you look at it from talent, contract, it's easy to point to Devin Singletary and say he's the odd man out. However, when you look at it in totality, you could almost say like, well, we could keep Devin Singletary and maybe, regardless of what we do with some of these other guys, right? Like you could say like, okay, we're going to re-sign Dawson Knox, and maybe whether we re-sign Tremaine Edmunds or not has no factor on whether they bring back Devin Singletary or not, because they're not going to have to pay the running back position as much. So it's all going to come down to money. It's a very nuanced conversation here, because the contract situation from a value standpoint, he's the lowest on the totem pole as far as like best player of that group, but he's also the lowest from a dollar standpoint. So you kind of have to weigh that into the equation a bit. He's 870 yards a year ago on 188 carries, 30 plus more carries than he had in 2020. If he gets around 225 carries, he could have 1,000-yard season. And it's not that unreasonable to think that he could have another 30 more carries than he did a year ago and get close to that mark. And I don't think you're going to have to pay him a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Justus' optimism as him being a top 10 guy, but I just don't think he is a top 10 guy. He's maybe a top 20 running back in my mind, which is fine, but then pay him accordingly, like as a top 20, and you'll be happy with that. I think.
I'll tell you what, my mind has been changed, because I put in my notes that this would be Devin Singletary's last year with the Buffalo Bills. And if he underperforms, he can't get his yards per carry up against stack boxes. James Cook ends up becoming some type of alpha that I'm not envisioning him becoming, etc. I think Devin Singletary, unless he really pops off and like really goes off, I can't imagine, looking at the market, that he gets a ton of money. I mean, I originally put the Austin Eckler contract down there, like as the deal, like 4 years, 24 million. That's 6 mil AAV, 15 million guaranteed. That's if he really pops off and has a huge year. But Austin Eckler is a touchdown machine,
and Austin Eckler
hasn't shown, and he has that receiving capability. So then I looked at Chase Edmunds, got 2 years, 12, 6 guaranteed. So still that $6 million AAV, but I don't even know if he gets that. Like Melvin Gordon got 1 year, $2.15 million on the free agent market. So
if the Bills went out and offered Devin Singletary a 3-year extension for $10 million, he'd be dumb to turn it down. I think.
I think $4 million is fair.
I think we're going to see this year how much of a deterrent Dayball was to Devin Singletary. I respect everybody's opinion. I just think that when I watch the film and I see what Devin Singletary does individually, like independent of any other factors, independent of the offensive line or whatever, or he does the right thing 90% of the time.
He's a good player. I agree.
So I feel like with an emphasis on the run game, like I said, with having Brady and Shula and Dorsey and Cromer all in the same room, I feel like there's going to be too much brain power not to get this off. The last 2 years, the offensive line has not been good from a run standpoint. It just hasn't. And so when I look at what Devin Singletary has done with that, I feel like he'll do even better with a better offensive line, and he'll show people how talented he really is.
Yeah, I mean, this one's going to be really tricky. I think if he has the season, like he really pops off this season and maybe does justice some of what you're predicting, I think he could get a contract in the $6 million range, like a Chase Edmunds. That's too rich for my blood. But if you can get Devin Singletary for $3-4 million to be your first and second down workhorse back, while James Cook does your passing down and third down stuff, I'm more than okay with like $3 to $4 million AAV. So I'm starting to warm a little bit more to Devin Singletary getting a second contract with the Buffalo Bills than maybe I thought he would previous to this. Because I mean, I've been saying since he was drafted, burn him and churn him. And then we drafted Zach Moss. I'm like, burn him and churn him too. But neither have really had the seasons yet that we've expected when the Buffalo Bills sort of drafted these guys. So it's up to James Cook to sort of break the mold of these running backs, and it's up to Aaron Cromer to sort of reestablish some semblance of a running game here in Buffalo that doesn't involve Josh Allen.
I think if you ask that question without Devin Singletary as a possible answer, and you say Dawson, Knox, Tremaine, Edmunds, Jordan Poyer, that would be an interesting.
Yeah, that's much tougher.
And that leads us to where we are next. The tight end market has absolutely exploded this offseason. You're even seeing guys like who does the George Kittle is even, going on Pat McAfee and talking about how Travis Kelce's underpaid. And you see some of these upper echelon tight ends talking about how they want to be paid like wide receivers. And you have some of these other tight ends who have done nothing in their career, like David Njoku getting 14 million AAV. So the next question is going to be whether Dawson Knox will be extended or not. But we got a little super chat here from you, boy. Let us always appreciate you boy. And it's concerning the running backs. He says, allowing that Devin is a top 10 running back, the value drop off between elite and good as a running back is very steep. That's why running backs are so devalued. You can get 1,200 from him, and he still gets 5 million AAV somewhere. Yeah, if he gets 1,200 with 17 games, there could be a team that falls in love and gives him 5 million AAV, or his market could dry up like Melvin Gordon's market dried up. And that's why it's sort of more of a toss up, and I'm warming up to it more than I was previous. But you're right. It only takes one team, and all of a sudden you're out of the market for Devin Singletary because you probably don't want to give him that 5 or 6 million AAV. But
those damn Jaguars,
they're going to give him 25 million guaranteed signing. Dawson Knox, though. Justus, I'll start with you. Dawson Knox, is he going to be a Buffalo Bill in 2023? Contract is up after this season.
So if you're asking the question, right, the way you said Jordan Poyer, Tremaine Edmunds, Dawson Knox. Now, if I had to say which one of those three that I would like to move on from, if I had the choice, I would say Jordan Poyer, just because he's a little long in the tooth. And I feel like the secondary is really, Mick Frazier's sweet spot. It's the bread and butter. I feel like they would be able to do enough to replace his value to a point where it would be less detrimental than if we were to lose Knox or Tremaine Edmunds, considering his age also, because the other two guys are young, right? But he's at camp, and I've heard from a lot of smart people that gives them reason to believe his contract should maybe be in the works, which means it now comes down to Dawson Knox and Tremaine Edmunds. And if I had to pick one of the, I know everybody loves Dawson Knox and they hate Tremaine Edmunds, but I like Tremaine Edmunds. And if I had to pick between those two, I would pick Tremaine Edmunds. So I mean, I like Dawson Knox and I would want him to stay, but he's given us 1 year of accountability, right? Where he could be not accountability, more like reliability. He's able to be reliable for this 1 year, and even him being reliable, he has top end talent, and I think him being extraordinary, he could be one of, if not the best tight end in the league. But I also kind of feel the same way about Tremaine Edmunds, to be fair. He's been reliable for a lot longer. And I think with the bolstered defensive line, he's going to have a lot better of a season as well. And I think his production would probably be worth more than a Dawson Knox. So if I had to answer the question like that, I would say this would be his last year. But I would like to keep Dawson Knox.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be really tough. Jessica Tennis comes in and says Knox is the glue for this offense. In her opinion, I mean, we saw those games where he got hurt. The offense sort of it took him a couple of games to figure out what the heck to do without Dawson Knox. Tommy Sweeney had his struggles. They tried Cahal Waring in there. They really didn't gel for a couple of weeks there in the middle of the season when Dawson Knox hurt his hand. So Jake, I guess I'll phrase the question to you the same exact way. Dawson Knox, Tremaine Edmunds, if you got to, devil's advocate, you got to choose between the two. Who are you going with?
So if I'm having to choose which one I'm paying, assuming that they both want top dollar, I'm kind of looking at the guy who, if I'm looking at, all right, where are they right now? Which one is closer to being worth the actual money they're going to be asking? And I believe that Tremaine Edmunds is still kind of one of those players to where he has the potential to be one of the top linebackers in the league, whereas Dawson Knox has taken more of a step forward to being one of the premier tight ends in the league, and he is closer to being one of those than Tremaine Edmunds is that as a linebacker. So if I'm looking at that, plus you brought it up, the Buffalo Bills don't really have an option. They brought in OJ Howard. Maybe that's a strategic thing also as well, to be like, hey, if he kind of plugs in here and we can use him, maybe that's a negotiating tool. But they don't really have an option outside of Dawson Knox in the building except for OJ Howard. And right now, I would probably pay Dawson Knox just because tight ends, it just seems as though the connection that they have with Josh Allen and with Dawson Knox, I just think that one of the things is going to be, well, we want to make sure that Josh Allen's happy. It's one of the guys. And while I don't think you can just let that get in the way of who you're going to pay, I think that just at an overall talent level at their position, I think that maybe it's a little bit more worth it to have a premier tight end in the league, because that's something that a lot of teams don't have. Whereas Tremaine Edmunds, we're still banking on his upside right now, and he hasn't really showed us.
Yeah, I think that 2022 could be really like, it could be these two guys slugging it out to prove who belongs on this roster in 2023. And honestly, that's good for the Buffalo Bills too, in a sense, because you're going to have these two guys who are really hungry, trying to prove that they're the ones who belong to stay here, and they're the ones who belong to be here long-term. So Dave, I'm going to phrase the question in the same exact way. Dawson Knox, Tremaine Edmunds, both guys have elite upside. Who do you think is going to be here beyond 2022?
I'll say this. I am a big Tremaine Edmunds fan. I do. I'm not a Tremaine Edmunds hater. I'm a big supporter of Tremaine Edmunds. I think he's obviously an important part to what the Bills like to do on defense. We've seen that with guys like Kuechly, Thomas Davis, etc. in the past. McDermott style defense. But for me, there are other factors at play here. The factors of the Bills having been in tight end purgatory for what seems like forever. The fact, like Jake said, that you can count on one hand the really elite tight ends in the NFL right now. It's Kelsey Kittle, Waller, and Mark Andrews, I think. And then the rest you can order however you want. But those are, to me, the top 4 tight ends in the league. And those guys are elite, and they are difference makers for their team. And I believe, just based on sort of how things have gone in the league the last few years, that it is easier to maintain a consistent top of the league offense than it is to maintain a top of the league defense. And when you have Josh Allen as your quarterback and he's your best player, he's your franchise player, I think what you do is if the decision comes down to it, you give him the best chance to succeed, right? It's not even really it is about the team, but you're giving Josh Allen the best chance to do what he can do best. And that's with Dawson Knox. And I mean, Justus is right? Like they both still do have question marks, right? It's been 1 year of good production for Dawson Knox, so we can't like totally discount that. But for me, knowing what the Bills had at tight end before they kind of made all this investment in Knox in these couple years of bringing him along, and they traded up for him in the draft. I know Tremaine Edmunds, they traded up for him too, but man, I just feel like it would be a shame to go back to that tight end purgatory that the Bills had been in for so long, especially now when you have Josh Allen as the quarterback.
Yeah, I'm sort of siding with you and going with Dawson Knox. To me, I love Tremaine Edmunds too, but for me, Sean McDermott's your head coach, right? So we talk about how some of these teams have advantages, like the Kansas City Chiefs or the New Orleans Saints back in the day, or the LA Rams. They have the advantage to where their head coach is their offensive coordinator. Their head coach is the person who drives the consistency on offense by, being there to sort of call the shots, to call the plays, to manage the offense. The same should go if you're a defensive-minded head coach. You have Von Miller. You have Ed Oliver. You have a rather stacked defensive line in terms of first and second round picks. Matt Milano, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Trey White, Kaiir Elam, Sean McDermott. If you are a defensive mastermind, do you really need all of these dudes in order to muster up a top 10 defense? I would think that having a defensive-minded head coach, you can take some of the resources that you would generally allocate to defense and you would allocate them to offense. You should allocate more salary to your offense because your head coach is defensive minded. So to me, Josh Allen and Dawson Knox seem very tight. I want to keep this offense rolling. I'm also thinking about Gabriel Davis in 2 years as well, because I expect him to pop off this year. So for me, I'm paying Dawson Knox over a guy like Tremaine Edmunds. I'm counting on Sean McDermott to take Terrell Bernard, to find a free agent linebacker off the street, and, just maybe 1 week when you're playing a team like the Colts or the Patriots who like to run the ball a little bit more, go with that 2-down linebacker who you're paying $3-4 million. A week where you're paying a team that passes the ball a little bit more, Terrell Bernard's in the lineup that week. Go out and just find some guys, patch some holes, make it work, Sean McDermott, on defense. It's nice to have Tremaine Edmunds, but you don't need him. Whereas I think Dawson Knox on the other side, you might need him. Justus, you look, you got something you want to chime in with here.
Just one question. All right. And now I'm not going to argue with anybody, even though everybody disagrees with me. But okay. So you made a great point about Sean McDermott being the defensive coach and a defensive mastermind, to be quite honest. He's created he's created great defenses on a consistent basis. So we can give that to him, right? Yeah. However, I have a question for you guys. Is Sean McDermott as good of a defensive coach as Josh Allen is of a quarterback, where he is able to make up for things like maybe losing one potential target in Dawson Knox when he has an array of others around him in the system of the offense?
And that is true. And I'm going to sort of deflect a little bit and go with the only concern I have is, and I trust Brandon Beane to go out there and find replacements, but Dave mentioned the tight end purgatory that we had been in before Dawson Knox. I fear the Aaron Rodgers effect. I fear that we let too many weapons walk away and Josh Allen starts to get mad because he starts to plateau, or he feels like he's got enough weapons to put up stats, but once he gets to the playoffs, he doesn't have enough weapons to put him over the top. That's generally where my concern is. I'm always going to be pro the Madden approach, pay those alpha dudes who help you score points. Matt716 comes in here and says Knox had 1 year, and he emphasized here 1 year. That's a good point too. If Dawson Knox falls back down to earth in 2022, that's an entirely different conversation that we're having, in February or in March of 2023. So that plays a role in it as well. So, Jake, what do you think here?
What am I thinking about? What is that exactly? The question.
How maybe Josh Allen doesn't need a Dawson Knox because he's a superior quarterback to Sean McDermott, who is a defensive sort of mastermind in his own right.
I'm really with you there. My big fear for Josh Allen is that eventually he's going to have to be thrown to the Walmart bag boys and stuff like that. You don't want to be that team that allocates so much into the defense that maybe, I understand you're a defensive coach and you want to look out for that and you want to have this elite defense and everything like that. But you also want, when you've got a quarterback like Josh Allen, to put and keep as many weapons around him as possible. So just when I look at that, yes, he's a defensive mastermind. And we've seen that, they've been able to put guys like AJ Klein in some instances where Tremaine Edmunds was out and it didn't work out, but then when they used him the right way and they were able to move the scheme, we were able to beat teams like the Seahawks, which that was the year that Russ was cooking. And that was like that offense was crazy. We've seen that they're able to move around with that too. So when I look at it, yeah, Josh Allen can elevate guys too, but at the same time, I kind of just look at it and I'm like, I would probably want to side more with keeping weapons around Josh Allen than I would be wanting to just.
Yeah. To me, I'd rather just keep Josh Allen. Sean McDermott, it's your job. It's your job to go out there and make sure the defense is firing all cylinders because you're a defensive coach. Quarterback, I want you to be happy because you're my franchise quarterback. Maybe I'm a little biased though, but Dave, any final thoughts on sort of this this conversation here. And Jessica Tennis comes with a great comment. Salary is going to be skyrocketing over the next couple of years with these TV deals.
Yeah.
Don't know the exact estimates of how much they're projected to go up. She says 260 here in 2024. So it is a middle point where I'll just bickering back and forth for nothing. We could afford them all.
Yeah, literally.
I just think the Bills' highest ceiling for performance is when Josh Allen's playing his best. And if you can raise that ceiling even a little bit higher by putting the best possible weapons you can around him, then I think that's the route you go. I mean, Sean McDermott in 2017 did wonders with that defense. We were a great defense, made the playoffs with Tyrod at the helm. Like, we can still have a very, very good defense. And that is something while other teams are going with offensive-minded head coaches, the Sean McVays, and obviously work. They won the Super Bowl. That could be an advantage to the Bills maybe at some point down the road when it comes into a big playoff game where they have that kind of stability on the defensive side of the ball, even though they have invested assets on the offensive side because they have that defensive-minded head coach and they're going to get the best out of those guys on that side of the ball. So I think that's where the best ceiling is for this iteration of the Bills. But I can certainly understand why people would think the other way.
All right, so Dave, just make sure you're on top of your game tonight because we got one of the big shots in the comment section right now. Greg Tom,
he's distracted. It's okay.
No, yeah, it actually doesn't really matter what you say because he says he's distracted by just his background pictures. You're covering the best one, in my opinion, John Dillinger. But
Greg,
hey, we got one.
Shout out, Greg.
one more thing we got to talk about here, and that is sort of the news that broke today. Adam Schefter's tweet: Buffalo's All-Pro safety Jordan Poyer will attend Bills mandatory minicamp this week, despite still seeking a contract extension as he enters the last season of his deal. The Bills have been in communication with Poyer's agent, Drew Rosenhaus, and Kyle Lincoln about his situation. So it appears that Jordan Poyer will not be going into any sort of mandatory holdout. Things could obviously change if things break down between now and training camp. I know his wife was on Twitter today saying she loves Buffalo, or he loves Buffalo, wants to be here. He loves his teammates, etc. Just, I'm going to start with you. What are your thoughts on this Jordan Poyer contract situation? And do you think he is a Buffalo Bill beyond 2022?
So speaking of Greg, Tom said he was one of the smart guys who, said that the, Jordan Poyer being in training or being at mandatory, is a good sign toward him getting a new contract. And also Jay Spence had a report where he said that he will be there, but he won't be practicing. So that was interesting. And again, if he's getting a new contract, I mean, okay. I would hope this is a magician, McBean type of thing. Also, it could potentially maybe be a LA Rams type of thing where they just give them, signing bonuses with cash and are able to keep players for a little longer or whatever the case may be. Because I don't want to lose neither Dawson Knox or Tremaine Edmunds. So, and, just looking at, logic and what I think the salary cap is, it doesn't seem like we'd be able to keep all three. And I love Jordan Poyer. He is an all-pro. He deserves to be paid like an all-pro. I just think that maybe that type of pay is a little rich for our blood. And this may be a little controversial. I don't know that Jordan Poyer is an all-pro in a defense that isn't the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because if you look at it, I think that the Buffalo Bills and Jordan Poyer should be able to find middle ground. Why? Yeah. Because no offense to Jordan Poyer, the Bills are holding all the chips here. I mean, if you're Jordan Poyer, you're 31 years old, you're going to hit free agency at 32. Who's going to want to pay a 32-year-old safety, no matter how many good years you're coming off of? The Buffalo Bills should be your best chance at getting a decent payday. But on the other hand, you don't fire your agent and hire Drew Rosenhaus because maybe you're looking to find middle ground. Yeah. That seems like the kind of move you make because you want one final big payday. I mean, Jordan Poyer, I don't want to get too into the projection and thinking about what's in a person's mind and the whole, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless type of ordeal, the things that you would see on ESPN. But I mean, if you look at it from the outside, Jordan Poyer wasn't a high draft pick. There was no big early career money for him. He's not exactly doing a ton of commercials and has a ton of sponsorships. I'm sure he has some and a lot that we don't see, but it probably is some aspect of having some making up to do in terms of getting what you felt like was your career worth and your career value. So I don't know if he goes out and has another all-pro year and hits the market, if the Buffalo Bills can afford to give him the most money. There could be a team out there who's willing to pay him at 32. Now, we didn't see it, like Tyrann Mathieu struggled to find it, but next year's a different year. Salary cap going up, et cetera, et cetera. So it only really takes one team. I would hope that they would come to an agreement, but I wouldn't be shocked if Jordan Poyer plays it out and tries to hit that market next year. And then if he does, that he ultimately does leave. Jake, what do you think about this Jordan Poyer situation?
Yeah, ever since it really came out, whenever he fired his agent and picked up Rosenhaus, I'm pretty sure there was a collective just all across Bills Mafia. There was panic. And then there's kind of the content creators who are sitting here. We know what's coming. He wants his money. He wants the bag. And like, it'd be different if he was like 26, 27, being like, hey, I'm trying to get my bag. Like now, as Justus said earlier, maybe being a little long in the tooth, yeah, he finally had that all-pro season. I mean, you can argue the last few years he's had that type of level of production. He just hasn't gotten the nods. And last year, I think the Bills aren't going to look at this situation and go, yeah, we're going to pay you. Like, you're so important to us, so we're going to pay you. Like, look, we know, like, it really helps having that safety duo back there. It really does. But I think that if the Buffalo Bills feel like they're being strong-armed in this, and we know how Brandon Beane looks at this, I think that they're going to try to get a deal done. But they're not going to put the team in jeopardy at all when it comes to the cap situation. Even though it is going up, maybe they don't feel that the value is there. Or maybe they feel that, like you said, they hold all the chips. So I think that they might take the calculated risk of being like, hey, if we can't meet right now, we'll let you play out this year. Maybe they don't want to do that. They'd like to lock him up. He's really important to the defense. But maybe they'll let him play out this year. And if he does get that all-pro nod again, then they'll go back to the table again. But if that number just is still way too high, then they might be just looking like, hey, maybe we'll bring somebody else in and we'll put them next to, like, they'll feel like they have options. And I feel like they're willing to take that risk. Of course, they'd like to get it done, but.
Do you guys see a tag or a trade midseason this year or next season with a tag?
I think the Buffalo Bills are all in. I can't foresee them I think the Buffalo Bills are just like, Jordan, if you want to hold out, fine, go for it. You've been with this team for 5 years. You know the system. Like, we'll see you week one because we know you'll be there. Like, that's the approach I'm taking if I'm the Buffalo Bills. And I'm just making him go out there and try to earn his bag this season because the Bills are in a Super Bowl, like, win now window. Like, I can't foresee or envision them trying to trade Jordan Poyer now.
Yeah.
I also think that the Bills also value culture. Now, culture isn't perfect, as we see with Jordan Poyer right now. I can't picture the Bills tagging Jordan Poyer just to trade him because that's a bad look. Like, that's a really bad look for your franchise. But Dave, any final thoughts here on Jordan Poyer in this whole situation?
I don't know that it's like AAV so much as it is the years, right? Like, I feel like the Bills are probably willing to give him like a 2-year deal, get him out to like age 33, 34, whatever, and give him decent money for that, right? And maybe they give Micah Hyde a 1-year extension as well at some point, so that those two guys kind of contracts line up with each other from a year standpoint. But I mean, you said, Poyer wasn't a high draft pick. He hasn't really had that huge payday yet. The Bills have given him some nice money, right, through a couple contracts, but like he could be looking for that, like, 4-year, $45 million. Like, he could be looking for a lot of money, right? Like, he could be looking for a lot of money on term, and the Bills might be only willing to give him a shorter term. So where I think this comes out, honestly, is the Bills I think the Bills will be willing to give him shorter term for higher AAV, right? Like, I think they'd be willing to give him a 2-year deal for $30 million without having to go past, 2024. Like, that's kind of where I see this playing out. I don't think they want to give him 3, 4, 5 years. That just doesn't seem to make sense. The Bills have been really, if you look at kind of the contracts they've handed out in free agency over the last couple of years, and I know he's not a free agent, they haven't really given a ton of contracts to guys for more than 2 years, right? Like a lot of these contracts they've been giving out have been like 2-year deals, 1-year deals. And I know Jordan Poyer is one of their own, but I'd still give him 2 years, tack on 2 in addition to 2022. So you have him for 23 and 24. And that seems reasonable to me. I think that's where that's where I would go with the Bills. And maybe you entice him by giving him a little bit more per year that way.
All right. So Von Miller was the big free agent addition this offseason for the Buffalo Bills. We've been talking about him and talking about him and talking about him. So for this next segment, we're taking Von Miller off the table. And the question to you guys is this: what free agent signing outside of Von Miller will have the biggest impact on the 2022 Buffalo Bills? So I'm going to start, Jake, with you. People in the comment section, let us know what free agent outside of Von Miller do you think is going to have the biggest impact on the 2022 Buffalo Bills? But Jake, I'll start with you.
Sure. I'm going to stay right on the defensive line. I'm going to say DaQuan Jones. And that's just because for the last few years, the Bills have really lacked just a consistent big man on the line that can help in run defense and help close up lanes. And for years, I feel like a lot of us have just been sitting here being like, we want a big one tech. Just give it to us. You know, that's what we want. Not these threes that can flex to one and stuff like that. Like straight up one. And DaQuan Jones, when they brought him in, that was a sigh of relief for me. I was like, all right, here we go. Here's the big guy. He's going to help, not just because it's going to help in the run defense, is because bringing up a guy that we talked about earlier, Tremaine Edmunds, I think it's going to help Tremaine Edmunds out. And the less decisions that Tremaine Edmunds has to make when he's sitting there trying to figure out what lane he needs to shoot into, the better. And I really like having a DaQuan Jones who's going to command that double team. And I think that is severely going to help the Bills, and something that for the last couple of years, we have just been being like, yeah, this guy can fit in there. And with the rotation, I think DaQuan Jones is going to be a big stalwart there in the middle of that defensive line. And I'm ready for it. I love that signing from the jump. And I think it's going to help the team like exponentially.
Justus, you were sort of shaking your head and grinning there. Did you have DaQuan Jones as your player as well?
Well, first, before I just want to say shout out to y'all sponsor, because Picasso Pizza is amazing. Okay, like so good. All right, if you guys have any coupons or something, no, but all right. So my signing is kind of like a three-way thing, right? It's more of the whole unit, and Jake, he had part of it. It's the Tim Settle, DaQuan Jones, Jordan Phillips. I just, and Jake said it perfectly with the Tremaine Edmunds, which is why I have such high hopes for Tremaine Edmunds, because he hasn't really ever played with a great defensive line, especially not now that he's in his older than he was before, exactly right. And he's more experienced. He has more time in the NFL. He knows more. I think it's no secret that the last 2 years our defensive line has been a weak point, and it's led to a bad, run defense, and probably worse than what people are saying, but still not great. And I think with more just more meat up front, more talent, more skill, at those positions with Tim Settle, DaQuan Jones, Jordan Phillips, not to mention another year of Ed Oliver, I think that is going to be absolutely huge for Edmunds and Milano and Bernard and those guys, and Christian Benford I think might be a surprise player as well. I could see him making a lot of plays this season as a result of the defensive line bolstering and being better. And then you got your edge rushers, obviously Von Miller, and another year of Gregory Rousseau. A freak like Von Miller gets to kind of give his tutelage to another freak like Gregory Rousseau, and give him what he needs to succeed. And having guys in the middle that can plug up hole and demand attention so that they don't have to be double teamed all the time is going to be huge. And so I think that whole unit, Brandon Beane completely flipping around the defensive line and bringing in a lot more talent, and I think it's going to be absolutely huge for this team.
Yeah, and just to throw one more thing on there too. I love that you brought up Ed Oliver, because I brought up Tremaine Edmunds. You know, if you have DaQuan Jones sitting there taking up two guys, you're leaving someone one-on-one with Ed Oliver, and that's when you're going to let him be able to eat. And that's just another thing that I love a lot of the signings. And of course, you know, I'm sure you guys have two amazing ones that you're going to bring up, but it's I love what Greg put in there too. I was going to say Jamison Crowder as well, but I didn't know if that was as much of an impact as DaQuan Jones.
Yeah, John V coming in saying, I'm on the west side of the 585. Is Picasso easy to get to? Well, there's 4 great Western New York locations. Head on over to picassospizza.net and you can get that good Buffalo style pizza. And if not, you can also head on over to picassospizza.net and you can order it anywhere you want in the country. They mailed me and Dave a pizza for draft weekend, and man, I almost didn't get up for draft coverage because I was just like in a food coma right before our pregame. So appreciate that, and appreciate Greg coming in saying smash that like. I think you guys both hit the nail on the head. My pick was DaQuan Jones as well. Whether it's making Ed Oliver better, whether it's making Tremaine Edmunds better, or Jordan Phillips, or Tim Settle, or Greg Rousseau, or Boogie Basham, or Von Miller, I think that we're going to look back at the end of the season and be like, hey, man, some of these guys really popped off. And one of the low-key reasons for that is going to be, as you know, Jake mentioned, it's going to be DaQuan Jones taking up double teams or doing a better job two-gapping than players had done in previous seasons. So, Dave, anything different? Like we got this is the DaQuan Jones fan club here tonight.
I mean, I'm glad you guys talked about the defensive line because it's certainly worth talking about and great picks. But the number 184 means something, and the number 184 is the number of targets being left behind from Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. Jamison Crowder is going to have an impact on this team in 2022. He is not he's not as proficient as a route runner in this kind of short area quickness that Cole Beasley has, but he is going to be a big part of this unit, right? The Bills have obviously enough volume in this passing game to feed 3 receivers and then some, right? Tight ends and running backs. So Gabriel Davis is going to step in and be the number 2. We know that. Diggs is going to get his 165-ish targets, but I mean, Jamison Crowder getting 80 to 90 targets is not out of the realm possibility here. Cole Beasley had 112 targets last year. I could see Jamison Crowder getting upwards of 90 or close to 100 targets this year if the Bills sling it another 625, 50 times like they did last year. I think Josh Allen had 600 and what was it, Steve? We talked about it was like 620 something pass attempts last year or something like that. I can't remember exactly what the number was, but plenty of volume to go around in the passing game. And you know, people are going to make a big deal of James Cook and he's going to catch passes. That's great. Dawson Knox is going to absorb some of those targets, but like behind that, you know, there's still question marks, right? Like what's Khalil Shakir going to offer you as a rookie? We'll see. What's James Cook going to offer you out of the backfield? We'll see how much more of the running backs get involved in the passing game. There are going to be targets aplenty for Jamison Crowder, and he will make good on those. To me, the best quarterback he's ever played with, obviously, in his career, and he's had some pretty good numbers with the Jets over his career. And so, yeah, he's going to be an impact player for the Bills this year.
A great question coming in here from Steve Lynn. He says, are you guys surprised the Bills have not signed a veteran cornerback? So Trey White, we've had conversations on this show about when his return could be. Probably somewhere, you know, me and Dave have sort of guesstimated somewhere between the Titans game and the Packers game after the bye week. That's sort of the range that Dave and myself have sort of prognosticated over the last couple of shows, pieced together by some of the comments that we've heard from various different coaches during OTAs. Dane Jackson, Kaiir Elam, Nick McLeod, Elijah Griffin, Christian Benford. These are some of the names. Cam Lewis that the Buffalo Bills are going to be rolling out there at cornerback this season until Trey White can come back. So are you guys surprised? Von Miller's best friend, Joe Hayden's still sitting out there on the streets. Jake, I'll start with you. You surprised the Bills haven't added a veteran cornerback yet?
No. And it's just because they like to keep stepping on our hearts, because when they do bring guys in, it'll be like washed Josh Norman or someone like that, who, you still think, okay, that guy can come in and provide something. I feel like they have confidence in Dane Jackson. I feel like when he had to step into the role last year, they had confidence in him coming into this year to be like, hey, we were able to see what you can do. We drafted this guy, Kyer Elam. We think that you're going to be able and, hold down the fort until Trey comes back. Maybe Trey goes on the PUP list and then that goes all the way to the bye week and then he comes back after that. Like, I don't like that they didn't bring in a veteran corner. I would like to see a Joe Hayden brought in just because I like competition. I really don't like it when it seems like guys just kind of get handed positions, and we have to assume that they are still having a competition there with Cam Lewis and all of them. They are all still competing, but it feels like when a guy was a starter last year after Trey White went down, it almost feels like he's inevitably going to be that guy that they put up there with Kyer Elam. So I don't like that they didn't bring a guy in, but it doesn't surprise me as well.
Justus, how about you? Surprised we're not seeing a veteran cornerback here at One Bills Drive by the time these mandatory minicamp rolls around this week?
Am I surprised? No, I'm not surprised. Am I upset about it? No, I'm not either. I'm not upset about it either. I mean, the writing was kind of on the wall, right? Last year, Levi Wallace got crumbs to come back. And honestly, they were ready to let him walk then. They were like, he was like, I want to be in Buffalo. I'll take a small deal. They were like, I guess. And they kind of just brought him back in and we're like, we'll let Dane, kind of play, that backup role again. But they were very comfortable with moving on to Dane Jackson even last year. So, what Dane Jackson was obviously able to do coming in lieu of Tre'Davious White's injury, they seem extremely confident with their secondary. You look at a guy like Teron Johnson, they're very comfortable in their slot corner. I feel like they're comfortable with a guy like Dane Jackson. So and they've seen it. Like I remember Tre'Davious White got injured at Thanksgiving in New Orleans, and everybody was like, well, the Super Bowl chances are done, it's over, and my saving grace was, well, we have the number one defense in the NFL at that point. And I was like, if Tre'Davious White goes out, maybe we have the number 10 defense in the NFL, we could still win a Super Bowl, potentially. And then we ended up with the number one defense still, the best secondary in the NFL, despite losing one of the best corners in the NFL. So I think they're very comfortable with what they can do in the secondary and, the options that they have. Would a veteran signing make me happy? Yes. I don't think we absolutely need one, but I think it would make me a little more comfortable for sure. But then again, I'm not in the locker room. I don't see those guys at practice every day. They're clearly comfortable with Saran Neal because he's high in the depth chart as of right now. Yeah. So they know more than I do. And again, we've already touted Sean McDermott as a defensive mastermind. So we've seen what he can do with a secondary. You look at Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde now. Jordan Poyer is trying to get top 5 money. They weren't really thought of coming to Buffalo. Micah Hyde had a name, but it wasn't as big as it is now. So I definitely think Sean McDermott is capable of performing well with the secondary he has at hand. And I'm sorry, I know I'm long-winded, but one more point. Just to your point, Steve, earlier you said how he is a defensive mastermind and he should be able to use lesser talent to be able to do more with it. And I mean, I feel like he's proven that he's done that. And with the secondary is another opportunity to do it, without that veteran corner.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you are the Buffalo Bills and you are as confident as you are in your ability to develop and get the most out of these young defensive backs, I think the last thing you want to do is take reps away from them at OTAs, at mandatory minicamp, in training camp, in the preseason. You don't want to take those reps away from them and give them to Joe Hayden if you know you have Trey White coming back to you sometime between weeks 2 and week 9 or whatever. So I think if you're the Buffalo Bills, I think right now it's about giving reps to those younger guys. AK Cash coming in with a great comment. He says, do you guys think OJ Howard will get a contract extension with the Bills after this year? This is a great question. Dave, what do you think about OJ Howard's future beyond 2022 with the Buffalo Bills?
I mean, if they're going to give him another if they're going to give him $3 million a year, sure. But like, I don't know what he's going to do with, 20, 30 targets. I just don't see how like OJ Howard is going to parlay his stint here with the Bills into some big free agent payday. I just don't see that happening unless something happens to Dawson Knox. Right. So, I think the Bills love having OJ Howard as the number 2 at that price point, $3.5 million. I think this is really kind of the best situation they've been at tight end. Obviously, kind of brought in guys like Croft and Hollister in the past, and they were okay. And Hollister didn't even end up making the team, but I mean, OJ Howard is a legitimate guy that you can do things with in 2 tight end sets and can bring something to you for you in the passing game, right? So beyond 2022, I don't know. Think maybe that hinges on what they decide to do with Dawson Knox, but like. I would not be opposed to bringing him back at that number for multiple years if he's willing to come back. I just feel like OJ Howard as a player is going to probably want to try to parlay this year into the Bills to another free agent deal. I just don't know how much volume he's going to get. That's the thing.
And this is the perfect hedging of the bets too, right? Like, oh, well, Dawson Knox priced himself out. He goes out and gets a huge deal in 2023 in free agency. Now we have OJ Howard. Second year in the system, we're going to double your volume from what you got in 2022 and 2023. You already know the playbook, et cetera. So we'll give you $6 or $7 million or $8 million as opposed to maybe the 14 or 15 that Dawson Knox could push. So this could be a hedging of the bets with OJ Howard. All right. Working our way through these segments here. Who will be the biggest threat to the Buffalo Bills for number 1 seed in the AFC? We see it year after year, at least by year after year. I guess we're spoiled now. The last 2 seasons, Buffalo Bills fans have left the season thinking, if only we had home field advantage in the playoffs. If only we had secured that number 1 seed in the AFC. So, Jake, I'm going to start with you. Who do you think the Buffalo Bills' number 1 threat is for that number 1 seed in the AFC?
I think it's the Indianapolis Colts. Now I know that a lot
it's
of people
still mine too, Justus. Don't you worry.
Yeah, see, there it is. Because I was thinking about it when I saw the list. I was like, all right, who do I got to pick? And I'm looking. I'm like, all those AFC West teams, man, they're gonna be beating up on each other. Their records aren't gonna be crazy. I'm looking at the Colts. They add Matt Ryan, and then they go get Ngakoue, and then they have the 26th strength of schedule, because they're playing the NFC East. And I just look at that. I'm like, that team last year felt like they were still having Phillip Rivers on their team away from being a true threat. And now they have Matt Ryan and they've gotten better and they have a pretty easy schedule. And I'm thinking, if there's a team in the AFC that I'm going to be watching throughout the entire year in the standings, it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts, because they feel like one of those teams that could be really dangerous this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the AFC North, they're going to be eating their young in that division. The Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens. AFC West is the same way with the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders. And then there's the AFC South. Like, can the Titans do what the Titans do? Or is it a chance for the Colts now with Matt Ryan in that running game and that defense to sort of rise from the ashes and become the new Tennessee Titans and ride that really easy division, the AFC South? And as you mentioned, playing the NFC East into the 1 seed. Justus, you seem like you agree that the Colts could be the biggest threat to the Buffalo Bills for that 1 seed.
Yeah, man, too many great minds on this platform. No, yeah, I mean, just look at it. I'll give a different answer for the sake of originality, but I mean, as he said, the AFC West is going to beat up on each other. I feel like, well, depending on what happens with Deshaun Watson, you could have 3 to 4 teams in the AFC North all be good. And I honestly don't even think the Bengals are going to be that good, but they could potentially. And, you know, I think the Steelers are going to be better than what everybody thinks they are, because they always are. You know, I don't know how, they just always are. You know, they're always at least good to decent. And, you know, they have a winning record every single year under Mike Tomlin's tenure there. So I have no reason to suspect that they won't be good this year. You know, they still have a great defense, and I think Mitch Trubisky is a better quarterback right now than what Ben Roethlisberger was last year. So my answer will be because Jake stole my answer, is
get picked first, man.
My answer will be the Ravens because I do think they are far and away the best team in that AFC North. And again, I think the AFC West is going to beat up on each other. And I think that if they can catch a hot streak and maybe beat up on their division a little bit, take advantage of the Steelers and the Browns, and maybe the Bengals aren't as good as people think think they're going to be. Excuse me. I think they could do it, but I mean, I don't think the Titans are going to be good this year. I think that Ryan Tannehill is befuddled or something. He's clearly not comfortable in that quarterback room, and I think that leaning on Derrick Henry might not go as good for them as it typically does. So that was my reasoning for thinking about the Colts. And again, like Jake said, they had a great roster last year. They're a great team. They're performing great. And quarterback was just throwing random interceptions at his own 5-yard line. So, you don't have that this year. You have Matt Ryan, who's an MVP in this league and can get it done. And I mean, he's old, but Brady's older, and Brady's still out here playing like MVP. So why can't Matt Ryan,
Yeah, I Matt Ryan has had a lot of not so great skill position players around in the last couple of years too, with Calvin Ridley being hurt and Julio Jones being hurt and all the various different players they've been throwing out there on offense with the Atlanta Falcons past couple of years. I think Tennessee, maybe they have a little last wind in them. Maybe Ryan Tannehill can piece together one more solid season. Derrick Henry continues to be Derrick Henry. That defense looks good on paper. Dave, how about you? Is there anyone else that you think could be really giving the Buffalo Bills the stiffest competition for the 1 seed? Two in the Dolphins.
Let me just say, like, Matt Ryan gets shit on a lot, but like that dude's a good quarterback. Like he stands in there and takes a hit and he delivered. Like, it's a good fit for him to go to the Colts, I think, especially with Jonathan Taylor there. Like, when he was with the Falcons, like, would they have Devontae Freeman there for like a couple years where they had a decent running game? But like, he's going to have like the best running game he's ever had in his career with that team. But in any case, I really like Justus's pick of the Ravens. I had been considering them. I think they're getting slept on a bit this year. I don't think their schedule, comparatively to a lot of the teams, is as difficult. It's one of the lower strength of schedules for the teams in the AFC. But look, you guys said Colts, you guys said Ravens. Like, I mean, the Chiefs are still the team, right? I know they have a very difficult strength of schedule, and I know the AFC West is going to be beating up on each other. But like, for me, maybe it's a reverse jinx I'm trying to put on the Chiefs and hope that they fall down a bit. But like, to me, that Chiefs are still that team that you got to like mentally get over. Like, you've proven that you could beat them in the regular season once. But for the Bills to go where they want to go, I really think the Bills need to play the Chiefs at home in the playoffs. And that's why I'm going to kind of try to reverse jinx the Chiefs here and say that they're still the biggest threat for the number 1 seed outside of Josh Allen. They have the best quarterback in the NFL and definitely in the AFC, whether you want to argue it's Josh or Pat, I don't really care. They're the 2 best quarterbacks in the AFC, and that alone puts the Chiefs in consideration for the 1 seed, just like the Bills are.
Yeah. Matt 716 comes in and says, hey, they got 4 receivers now instead of 2. So, hey, anything can happen. I'm hoping the Chiefs, get worked this regular season.
I mean, I hope so too.
I'm hoping the AFC West takes them to town.
I thought they were going to get it last year too. It looked like we were all at the beginning of the season going, the Chiefs are dead. The Chiefs are dead. And then they just came out and then you're like, oh.
They're not a top AFC team without Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. I got to see it before I believe that. He just changed the defense too much. And I got to see how they respond to playing against defenses that don't have safeties 15, 20 yards back. Obviously Patrick Mahomes is still amazing. So I just think that he'll have to have an Aaron Rodgers type season in terms of efficiency in order for them to be a top team. And we'll see if he can do it, or he can do it. We'll see if he does it,
I think the moral of the story of the conversation that we just had here in this segment is that the Buffalo Bills need to do their business in the AFC East this year. They need to take advantage of what I think is a weaker second half of the schedule.
Yes.
And they really got to push for that number 1 seed in the AFC, because once we get there, we just talked about all these teams. I think the road to the Super Bowl once we get to the playoffs is going to be more difficult this year than it has been in the previous 2 years. I think the Buffalo Bills are the best equipped they've ever been to handle it, but it's also going to be the best in the stiffest competition they've had in the AFC since they sort of started going on this run here the last couple of years. All right, final segment for this evening. We're going to do a little bit of buy or sell for the Buffalo Bills 2022 regular season edition. What we're going to do is we're going to throw a couple of topics out there. Do you buy the statement or do you sell the statement or the scenario that I'm going to throw out? So feel free to play along with us in the comment section. We're going to start with this one here. Devin Singletary will be a 1,000-yard rusher in 2022. Buy or sell? I'm going to make sure I start with Justus so Jake can't steal his answer here.
So I mean, as the guy talking up Devin Singletary, I guess I could buy this one, right? No, but I wrote down buy before the show. Honestly, I do. I think he will be. With Aaron Kromer, like I said, those offensive minds coming in, I think that they see how inept Dayball was with the run game last year, and I think that they'll make it their business to show the league that this is a new era in Buffalo. And I think the way to do that is to not only have the most dynamic, explosive football player in the NFL as a quarterback, but to also establish the run game. And I think that they will do that with Devin Singletary because they will recognize the talent he actually has and be able to utilize it to the best of his potential.
We got a lot of people in the comment section selling on this one. Jake, are you with Justus or are you with the people?
So I think the people are gonna like me, just because I was when I was doing that. Like, of course, it's not because I don't think Devin Singletary can't do it. I think it's just kind of I look at the history of what the Buffalo Bills have done, and like, I understand Kromer comes in. Yeah, those were great rushing teams they had, but that was the focus of those offenses was running the ball effectively. I don't know what this Buffalo Bills offense is going to look like. So if I'm going to take the risk here and say, if I want to buy this stock or sell this stock of Devin Singletary hitting 1,000 yards, I'm probably still going to lead and not take that risk. And I'm probably going to sell it just because I don't know what they're going to do. They bring in James Cook. We don't know what they're going to do. We've seen when they bring in other running backs and you're like, oh, well, Devin Singletary is still going to be the lead back. And then they're like, no, actually, we still think we're going to split the carries in between them. And you're not going to get a majority. There's just so many things that the Buffalo Bills have done before that kind of make me hesitant to completely buy into this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tricky one. Only 7 running backs in the National Football League went over 1,000 yards last season. Injuries had a lot to do with it. Looking at some of the guys in the 900 range, Elijah Mitchell, Derrick Henry, Damian Harris, Austin Eckler, a lot of those guys, Alvin Kamara, all probably would have gone over 1,000 had it not been for injuries, but injuries are a part of the National Football League. You would think with a 17-game season, you would see an uptick in 1,000-yard rushers, but you're really not with the installation of the committee backfields, et cetera. So Dave, what do you think? Buy or sell a 1,000-yard season for Devin Singletary?
Yeah, so if he's around his career average of 4.7 yards a carry, he's going to need about 212, 213 carries to get to that mark in 17 games. He's only averaged 51.8 yards a game in his career. He needs about 59 yards a game to get to that mark in 17 games. So, I mean, I like what Justus said, but I feel like
that was impressive. Sorry.
The thing is like Devin Singletary very easily could be a 1,000-yard back, but I just think on this team he's not going to be. But that's not an indictment on his talent or on what he brings to the table, right? It's more just around like what I think the Bills offense, unless they like go back to 2021 numbers where Josh only threw the ball in the high 500s. I still feel like Josh's going to sling it 625, 650 times this year. Devin Singletary might have around 200 carries this season, but he had 188 last year, an average 51.8 a game. So, and had 870 yards last year. So he wasn't that far off, 130 yards away, but based on his career average, that's almost 3 full games. So, I'll take the sell, but it wouldn't surprise me, if he did make it to 1,000.
I'm going to buy here. I think that Devin Singletary is going to be the traditional bell cow back for the Buffalo Bills this year. Traditional in the sense where I don't think it's going to waver. I think on first and second down this season, Devin Singletary is going to start the year as the guy for the Buffalo Bills. And barring injuries or barring him fumbling, I really do think that he's going to maintain the alpha first and second down carries for the Buffalo Bills. I do think James Cook is going to step in that JD McKissick role and take a lot of that third down stuff, but I think a lot of that will be more pass catching than traditional running. So I think Devin Singletary can get to that 215 carry mark this season because I think he's going to have a little bit more faith of the coaching staff because of what he did in the second half of the year last year. So with the 17-game season, with all that being said, I'm going to buy Devin Singletary to go over 1,000 yards. And that leads us to our second scenario here. Gabriel Davis, Emmanuel Sanders, gone. Cole Beasley, gone. That is a lot of targets leaving the Buffalo Bills offense. Gabriel Davis obviously went off last year in the playoffs. Expectations are high for the third-year receiver out of the University of Central Florida, Jake's alma mater. Buy or sell Gabriel Davis being a 1,000-yard receiver. And just because Jake went to UCF, I'm going to start with Justus.
Oh, wait, really? Oh, I thought you were
that's serious.
All right.
That's how I roll.
Oh, man. I'm going to go by here because I do believe in Gabriel Davis. I should have said sell since you know. No, but I'm going to go by here. I do believe in Gabriel Davis, and from what I'm hearing from camp, is apparently this kid's amazing. Like he's incredible. I've heard it from Emmanuel Sanders said he's incredible. John Brown, when he was first here, he said, Gabriel Davis and Isaiah Hodgins was teaching him the playbook as the veteran on the team. And he's coming to the league. He's obviously got the smarts for it. He's got the big playability. He's got the big moment ability. He comes through typically whenever the ball is thrown his way. He is a little bit of a drop problem, but nothing, like what we've seen from like Dawson Knox or anything. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And if he can clean up those drops, he could be bordering upon maybe a number one receiver in this league, potentially. So I'm going to buy that he does have 1,000 yards receiving this year.
Jake, what do you think?
This one I actually had to think about. And it wasn't until I realized that, Emmanuel Sanders is gone. Cole Beasley is brought in. I started to think because he's had around like 60-something targets the last couple of years. And that's because he's been the next guy back. This is the first year where Gabe Davis is being handed you are wide receiver too. Like you're going to be that guy. We're not bringing in a guy because we don't know if you're that guy yet. He's that guy now. Like they're like, all right, yeah, we're going to let you step in this role. And I think he's going to benefit from the more targets that he's going to have. I think that with some of these newer targets that maybe Josh Allen is going to have to throw to, maybe he's going to want to lean more towards Gabriel Davis because that's the more sure thing. Yeah, Jamison Crowder is brand new, but and maybe you don't trust him in some situations as much as you do Gabe Davis on a certain play. So I think he's going to be benefiting from that. I think that if Gabe Davis doesn't hit 1,000 yards, it's going to be in like the 900s and stuff like that. Like I would buy this one. I like Gabe Davis. I think he's going to step into that role. And it's not just because I'm from UCF. I've been believing in Gabe Davis for a while, and I think he's ready to finally take that role that we all know that we think that he can do. And I think he's going to kind of benefit from now that he has these targets, those games where you saw it with AB and Juju Smith-Schuster, whenever all that attention's being paid to Stephon Diggs, we've seen what he can do. So I think in those games, he's going to take advantage of that. And I think Gabe Davis, this would be an easier buy for me than Devin Singletary, 1,000 yards.
Dave, how about you? What do you got for Gabriel Davis? Buy or sell 1,000 yards in 2022?
I mean, I know people are like very easily jumping on the buy train, and that's kind of where I'm headed. I mean, there's over 1,300 yards being left behind between Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. In 2020, Cole Beasley was only 33 yards shy of 1,000 himself as a slot guy with 82 catches. So if you do expect Gabriel Davis to be the guy that steps up as the number 2 and vaults himself into that 80 catch range, right, as the number 2, his yards per catch is obviously, or it should be, much higher than what Cole Beasley's was in 2020. And he should get that. Right now, the Bills haven't had 2,000-yard receivers, I think, since Peerless Price, Eric Mold's era, but this is the team, and these are the 2 players that could do it, right? It's Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis. He's never had over 600 yards in its first 2 seasons, so we're talking about a pretty significant jump up for him. But he's certainly capable. I do worry a little bit that we are so concentrated on that playoff game that it maybe skews our expectation from a yardage standpoint of what he's going to do. Because I do think, and I made the prediction on the last show, I do think he's going to have I think he will lead the team in touchdown receptions. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to get 1,000 yards. I will buy, but I don't think it's as easy of a layup as some people are kind of making it out to be.
I'm really set my expectations high with Gabriel Davis this year. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to buy him as a 1,000-yard receiver. I believe he gets between 100 and 120 touches. I think he almost doubles his touches from last season. I think he becomes that alpha number 2. And I really do expect, and maybe I'll be disappointed because this is my expectation, and the Bills can still be very successful if it falls short of my expectation, is that Diggs and Davis will become a Mike Evans, Chris Godwin-esque duo for the Buffalo Bills. I really want the offense to funnel between these 2 guys because I think both of these guys, Diggs has already shown he's an alpha in the National Football League. I think Davis, I feel like the Buffalo Bills might have really stole that guy in the 4th round, and he could be an alpha wide receiver in this league as well. We've seen some alpha performances and we've seen some alpha plays that he's made. If he could string that together for a full season, he could become an alpha wide receiver in totality. All right, the next buy or sell. 2 Buffalo Bills players will record 8+ sacks. So 8 or more sacks. This was originally, will 2 Buffalo Bills players have double-digit sacks? Mm-hmm. And I decided to change the buy or the sell because when I looked into the statistics, only 17 players in the National Football League recorded double-digit sacks last year. And only 2 teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers with TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, and the Arizona Cardinals with Chandler Jones and Marcus Golden, had 2 players with 10+ sacks. But if you lower that number, that bar, to 8, 34 players with 8+ sacks in 2021 and 10 teams with 2 players with 8+ sacks. So I'm going to set the bar at 8 sacks here. 2 Buffalo Bills players will record 8 sacks or more in 2022. Buy or sell? Jake, I'm going to start with you.
So this one I had to go. I'm like, oh yeah, Von Miller. But then I had to remember a lot of teams don't do the rotation that the Bills do with their defensive line. And I was like, all right, well, if I'm thinking about it, like, yeah, Von Miller could be an 8+ sack guy, but the way they rotate the other guys is, are those guys, is one of them gonna play just enough snaps to get over 8+? I don't know. So I hit sell here. I would sell this. I know it's probably going to be split in the comment section too with buys and sells because I think that it's a tough question because of the rotation that the Buffalo Bills use with their defensive linemen. I think it's going to be hard for multiple players to get above 8+ sacks.
Justus, what do you think? Buy or sell 2 Buffalo Bills players with 8 or more sacks in 2022?
I want to buy it, and as much as I do want to buy it, I'm gonna have to sell here. Von Miller, I can say that I'm comfortable with, if I were a betting man, I would, he would plus 8 sacks. And I really do hope that his tutelage and his influence can have a positive effect on Gregory Rousseau, who I think is the other candidate in this scenario to have 8+ sacks. We're really going to be seeing we're really going to need to see a season from AJ Epinesa if he wants to stay on this team. with this rotation and how, he's seen since he was drafted 2 other players be drafted in the top 2 rounds. And I don't know if he'll be able to do that. And if he does, I don't think it'll be to the tune of 8 sacks. I feel like Ed Oliver, that's a good one. I forgot about Ed Oliver. 8 is a little rich. So I'm still going to sell, but that does make it a little tougher.
Dave, buy or sell? 2 Buffalo Bills players with 8+ sacks in 2022.
I got to stick to what I predicted on the defensive preview show. I'm going to sell. I just don't see. You have to think about who the candidates are, right? Obviously, Von Miller is the number 1 candidate, and then probably it's Ed Oliver and Gregory Rousseau are the 2 that you look at that could potentially do that. But I just don't see that happening. I do like Gregory Rousseau and Ed Oliver to maybe get around like 5 to 6 each, which would be nice. But I just don't. 8's a lot. 8's a big number to me. I know it's an extra game, but I'm going to sell this one.
Yeah, I think the easy thing to do is to sell this one, and you guys just take spot on. One guy could be the alpha, that guy being Von Miller, and then the rest of the guys all chip in like 5, 6, 7 sacks. So team-wise, we have a ton of sacks, but maybe not so much individually. But I'm high on my own supply tonight. I'm buying, and I'm saying 2 of the 3, Von Miller, Ed Oliver, and Gregory Rousseau, 2 of the 3 will get to 8. This season for the Buffalo Bills. So I'm going to buy. I'm going to be the lone buy of the 4 of us here. Next scenario has to do with the Buffalo Bills secondary. A Buffalo Bills player will record 6+ interceptions. And if you're buying this one, who? 11 players in the National Football League had 5+ interceptions in 2022. Hyde and Poyer were tied for 4th in the NFL, each with 5 interceptions. So can one of them, or a new Buffalo Bill, increase that total to 6 and have 6+ interceptions in 2022? Buy or sell? Justus, what do you got here?
Yeah, I'm also gonna go ahead and sell this one. I just yeah. I don't know. Again, if you had a candidate, again, like Dave said, it would be like your Tre'Davious White, and he's not going to be there. I don't really expect Kyer Elam to get 6, although he got 3 in week 1 in our Madden simulation. So
yeah,
who knows? So but Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, they could, but you know what? I'm gonna buy, and I just talked myself into it because I've been speaking all day about how they bolstered this defensive line, right? And I truly do believe that they're going to make a huge impact on this football team. And with less time for the quarterback to throw the football, we've all watched, the Bills football. We've all seen, quarterbacks stand there for 4, 5, 6 seconds and just scan the field, and finally somebody comes open. And I think you'll see a lot less of that if there can be pressure on said quarterback, and if he only has 2, 3 seconds to throw the ball this time, that's where you might see a lot more turnovers. And I think Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde might be able to take advantage of that. So I'm gonna go buy here, just based on of the strength of the defensive line.
Jake, how about you? Buy or sell one Buffalo Bills player with 6+ interceptions in 2022?
I'm glad you came around, Justus, because the first thing that was coming to my mind was that defensive line is going to make some quarterbacks make some more mistakes. I think that the more pressure they're going to generate, I think there's going to be some mistakes there. And I think Micah Hyde is going to actually record 6, probably 6 exactly interceptions on the season. So I would actually buy this one because I think that defensive line is really going to make quarterbacks actually, because we've seen quarterbacks pressured before, but I think with the new additions to the defensive line, we're going to see even more, and that's going to cause some more mistakes that the secondary will capitalize on.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is exactly what you just mentioned. I think the pressure is going to be relentless this year, whether it's Von Miller, Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Jordan Phillips, Tim Settle, DaQuan Jones, 2-gapping, maybe get some more linebacker pressures. I expect, especially when Trey White comes back and maybe we could play a little bit more man-to-man, I expect the Buffalo Bills to be a little bit more exotic in the way that they rush the quarterback in 2022. So I'm buying, and I think one of Jordan Poyer or Micah Hyde pushes 10 interceptions this year. I think one of them is the benefactor. I'm not saying both of them will.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe they split it and it's 5-5 again, or 6-6 or something like that. But I think one of those two ends up the big beneficiary, and one of them pushes towards those double-digit interception numbers and really makes a national splash this year. Again, I'm high on my own supply tonight. So, Dave, buy or sell one Buffalo Bills player getting 6 or more interceptions in 2022?
You said a good number, because five I think is the magic number. I'm going to sell on 6, though. The last time the Bills had a player get 6 or more interceptions in a season was Jarvis Byrd back in 2009. So you're talking 13 seasons ago was the last time they had an individual player with more than 5. Now, they've had guys with 5, Micah Hyde, Jarvis Byrd again. So they've had guys with 5, but 6 is a tough one for me. So I'm going to sell. I don't think a single player will get 6. I think you could maybe have 2 guys with 5, but I don't think you'll have a single player with 6.
All right. This next one is my personal favorite because I do not think the Buffalo Bills have done enough at this position this offseason. Buy or sell, barring injury, the Bills stick with one punt returner in 2022. Jake, what do you think here? Buy or sell?
I do not have anything in all caps on my notes except for the sell on this one. And
this might be unanimous.
Yeah, the last time I was actually on a show with you guys, we were talking about, can Isaiah McKenzie step up into that role as the return man, and that they ended up not really going with that, and then they brought in Marquez Stevenson, and it's not secure. There's not a guy there that is like the unanimous, all right, yeah, I know that guy's going to be there. It would not surprise me. One guy has a fumbling issue one week. You see Tavon Austin out there the next week. Or like in our Madden simulations, literally every single week. The first week it was Crowder. Second week it was McKenzie. This week it's Tavon Austin. Like I literally think I would sell this one 10 times out of 10.
Justus, buy or sell on this scenario here?
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this one too. Just for all the same reasons Jake gave. Excuse me. I just don't see it. I just don't see it there. Yeah, not this one. I got to sell this one.
Dave, how about you? Buy or sell the Bills having a consistent punt returner in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, Andre Roberts isn't walking through that door, so this is sell for me, man. I mean, I'd love for it to be a situation where I could buy, but I think this year could be a settling year where you could figure out who that person's going to be, but that means that this year it's going to be a little bit of trial and error still, I think. So
fingers crossed. And I think training camp and preseason will answer a lot of these questions and maybe will give us a little bit more comfort. Fingers crossed that Khalil Shakir just takes it and runs with it and is wide receiver 5 this year, returning punts every game. But I'm going to sell as well. I think you're probably going to see Micah Hyde in stretches this year, or a situation where maybe the Buffalo Bills, maybe once, Trey White comes back, if somebody gets the fumbleitis like Isaiah McKenzie or something, you finally bite the bullet and cut a Taiwan Jones and bring in a Tavon Austin just to be a guy who just solely returns punts because you need to do that. So I think you will see Micah Hyde or even Tavon Austin at some point this year if Khalil Shakir or Isaiah McKenzie or Marquez Stevenson cannot settle the position of punt returner. Which leads us to the last two, and these are some real fun ones. And then since we're already 205 in, we'll call it a night after these next two. But Josh Allen will win the NFL MVP award in 2022. Buy or sell? Justus, what do you got here?
For this one, I mean, my @ name is JA17 MVP, and I have to. So Josh Allen MVP is definitely going to get bought. I do think that Josh Allen, I think it's kind of like I call it the Malcolm Butler syndrome, right? I don't know about you guys because you guys, maybe you knew a little bit more about the Patriots than I did at the time, but I had no clue who Malcolm Butler was before that interception in the Super Bowl, right? And then the next season, all of a sudden, he was like this star player that was like a lockdown corner and all this other stuff. And he actually started to play really well, based off of the confidence he got from that interception and becoming a Super Bowl hero. I am inclined to believe that brings a player a certain type of confidence when you're able to do it, in the biggest moment of your life and perform at a high level, which is why I project Gabriel Davis to perform so well this season, because I'm hoping he gets that, Malcolm Butler syndrome, or Josh Allen for that instance. He performed the best quarterback performance we've ever seen in postseason, and was absolutely flawless versus the best competition that the NFL had to offer, right? This is the playoffs. Things move 10 times faster, and you're out here putting up video game numbers, literally video game numbers, because again, I'm referencing the Madden cast. If the weeks 1 through 3 have anything to say about it, Josh Allen will undoubtedly be your MVP because he's playing out of his mind, right, in the Madden Simcast, and he played out of his mind in the playoffs last year. And I expect him to play out of his mind come regular season. So I'm going to say yes. Buy it.
Jake, how about you? Buy or sell Josh Allen, League MVP 2022?
So Josh Allen had a claim to it 2 years ago, but Aaron Rodgers went off and went crazy. Last year, Josh Allen was really good as well, had a few down games that brought the numbers down, so he wasn't really in the race as much. We have a thing that we've been talking about, me and Justus, and it's hashtag JA5K, and that is what Josh Allen is going to throw for this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with all these weapons and him being able to spread the ball around, I think this is finally the year that the Bills have gone all in and Josh Allen is going to reap the benefits from it. I think this is finally the year with all the exposure that he's kind of had. The NFL loves storylines, right? So he's already in the media. He's in the match. They're already talking about it. He has one of the greatest playoff performances the year before. I think this year is finally going to be the putting the cap on Josh Allen as one of the premier superstars in the NFL this year. And I think that storyline alone, if he puts up the numbers, I don't think Aaron Rodgers three-peats with Devontae Adams leaving. I think that this is Josh Allen's year to get it, so I'm buying this one.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers loses Devontae. Patrick Mahomes loses Tyreek Hill. Mm-hmm. There's a reason why it's Josh Allen and Justin Herbert who are going back and forth the Las Vegas odds for being the betting favorite for NFL MVP. I think this season, Josh Allen pushes 50 touchdowns. I think the Bills push for a number 1 seed in the AFC. And I think the national publicity from his playoff performance last year, from being in the NFL MVP conversation the last 2 seasons, you saw the national exposure, the thing like the match. He didn't get invited to the match by accident. Mm-hmm. He is one of the upper echelon quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think the national publicity finally pushes him over the top this season. I'm going to buy Josh Allen as NFL MVP. How about you, Dave?
I'm going to buy. He has overcome, and this is not a diss, okay, but he has overcome the market he plays in to be a national star in the NFL. I know Green Bay's market is small, but there's the Packers and they have a ton of history. So it's very easy to put the Packers on the national stage and Aaron Rodgers. It has been very difficult to get the Bills on the national stage for good reason for the past 20 years, but now they have a reason, and that reason is number 17. Obviously, the team winning and all that is a factor, but Josh Allen is a star. He is the face of the franchise. He is one of the faces of the NFL now, even to the casual fan who tuned in and watched playoffs last year and even the year before. Rodgers, Adams is gone. Tyreek Hill's gone for Kansas City. Everything is lining up for Josh Allen to finally take that crown to win the MVP this year. But if you ask him, he would trade that and take the Super Bowl MVP over the regular season MVP 10 times out of 10. But I do think he can take home the regular season MVP this year as well.
Why not both?
Why not both?
All right. Final question for the end of this marathon program. Thank you to our 2 guests this evening for sticking with us, and thank you in the comment section for sticking with us. I did not expect this to take us 2 hours to get through all of these topics this evening, but a lot of good conversation and a lot of extra topics thrown in from the comment section as well. So final buy or sell for the evening. Sean McDermott wins NFL coach of the year. Jake, do you buy or sell that?
So where Josh Allen is going to get all of the glory, I think, this year, I think, again, we've seen it so many times. Sean McDermott gets passed over for maybe people that do not deserve it. And I don't think that this year will be any different. So I think that everybody's going to look at the offense and all that, but I don't think that Sean McDermott is going to get a lot of credit this year, depending on how the Bills do. I mean, if you know how coaches are, if a team that was bad and then does marginally better steps up, that's the guy they're looking at more, right? So the Bills have been consistently good for the last few years and have been like, I don't think the NFL's looking at that and like, oh yeah, that's guy's coach of the year. So I would sell on this one.
Justus, how about you?
Man, I thought when I wrote this down on my paper, I was like, I'm going to sell this. Everybody's going to be shocked. And I look at the comments and say, sell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, what Jake said, people, there's guys like Bill Belichick and Andy Reid and Mike Tomlin and, these Sean McVay, these guys probably should be coach of the year every year, right? Some of them and, what they do, but they, for some reason, always give it to a Mike Vrabel for whatever, or the Browns coach got it the 1 year. Like, you know what I mean?
That was a travesty. That was a travesty.
Yeah, exactly. So, they're going to give it to some weirdo. The Jaguars might sneak into the playoffs or something, and they'll give it to Peterson. Yeah, whatever. There'll be something like that. Zach Wilson might get Zach Wilson, or what's the guy from Cincinnati? Zach
Taylor.
Zach Taylor. Okay. Somebody like that might get it. I don't think that, Sean McDermott has won too much.
Yeah.
He's been too good. What he does doesn't count anymore until he lifts the Lombardi. Anything he does right now is just until he has to take the Lombardi because he's been too good. So I'm going to sell that one.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm selling as well. The NFC is not great this year. So LaFleur in Green Bay, McVay in Los Angeles, even like Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay, I can see them pushing, 13, 14 wins and getting it for that. A guy like Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings this year, if he can get them to 10 wins, he can get the Kevin Stefanski kudos. You got to the playoffs with the team, so you get the coach of the year award. Like we mentioned, the travesty it was when Stefanski got it, but Sean McDermott couldn't get it for leading. Google that Bills roster in 2017 that Sean McDermott took to the playoffs and tell me that man didn't deserve the coach of the year award. Absolutely ridiculous. But then you look at the AFC, and the AFC North has two of the most respected coaches in the game, bar none, in Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Yeah. Mike Tomlin barely slid into the playoffs last year. John Harbaugh missed the playoffs last year. I think Tomlin and Harbaugh, I would place my money if I was to place a bet on one of those two, because I think one of those two guys is going to win the AFC North this year with 10 plus wins. And I'll be like, look at what Tomlin did once Ben Roethlisberger retired, or look what John Harbaugh did a year after they missed the playoffs and half their team got hurt. They got 11 wins in that really tough AFC North. We're going to give the trophy to those guys. Those are the kind of storylines that I envision winning coach of the year. So I'm going to sell it because I just don't think Sean McDermott's ever really going to have, like I mentioned, until he hoists the Lombardi. And even then, because it's not a postseason award, yeah. And then he has to repeat it by like winning a ton of games the year after as well. Is he ever going to get that kind of respect, I think, from the people who vote for this award? Dave, what are your thoughts? Buy or sell Sean McDermott coach of the year?
Yeah. Well, the MVP is very kind of, it's a little less gray area because there's a lot of statistical backing you can do to kind of get to that. The coach of the year award is a little murkier, right? It's usually it's usually around expectations, right? And if the expectations are low and the results are high, then a lot of times that coach gets it. If the expectations are high and you deliver, you're really probably not going to get that. I mean, Belichick's only won coach of the year 3 times in his entire stint as the Pats head coach. And his last time he won it was in 2010. So, I mean, even Belichick's only won the award 3 times. Dick Duran won Coach of the Year 1 year with the Bears, right? Because they had that all-world defense where went 13-3. It's a weird award. It oftentimes doesn't make sense who wins it. The Stefanski thing, I still can't understand it. Now that there are high expectations on McDermott, unfortunately, that works against him in this situation. I think if anything, he probably had his best chance to win it in 2017, given the situation, or maybe 2020, right? Yeah. So I'm going to sell on it just because I just feel like it's a weird one and it never really works out how you think it's going to work out.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Only Bills Mafia on June 13th can have a show go for 2 hours and 15 minutes and still feel like that wasn't long enough. So thank you to every single one of you guys in the comment section for kicking ass all night. We appreciate it. We wouldn't be a show without you guys in the comment section. And thank you to our 2 amazing guests. We're going to have you guys on maybe during the pregame shows. If you guys aren't doing a pregame show of your own, we're going to have to get you guys on during the regular season. Before we head out of here, tell the people where they can find your work.
You want to go first, Justus?
Go ahead, Jake.
Okay. Well, you can find all of my stuff at Jake the Bills Fan, and then you can find all of the beautiful work that we do at the Buffalo Fan Base YouTube channel, and you can also follow Buffalo Fan Base on literally every single platform. And then, of course, we're always posting our own stuff, and then you can check out the lowdown on the Buffalo Fan Base Podcast Network every Friday. So definitely make sure to check out for that. And yeah, me and Justus are always doing things together, whether it's Maddencast or First Round Bye on Fridays. Like, we're always around. So make sure to come check us out.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you, guys, for having us. Dave, you already know you're my guy. You know, I've done a lot of this with you, and this is a great time we talk. Steve, we haven't had the chance to do a show yet, but this was obviously amazing. You're a great guy, and you guys are 2 of my favorite follows on Twitter. So thank you guys for having us. But yes, Justus General. Well, no, it's not Justus General. I actually got to change that. It's JA17 again. JA17 MVP again for the regular season, because we all know Josh Allen gets good luck when that's my ad name, right? So I had to bring it back. And yeah, hype videos, podcasts, live videos, we got it all at Fanbase. Now that we're at the end of the episode, we have a ton coming, so be on the lookout for that. As a little nugget for you guys to stick around. And yeah, it's a lot of big things. Also tune in Sunday, because we have Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens. Should be a good one. That is Buffalo Fan Base, FAM as in Mafia. And yeah, make sure you guys come check us out. We got it. We're gonna figure out a way to get Tilt Money and Judge Mathis on the show as well. So make sure you guys tune in for that, because one of the shows these guys are gonna be on soon. So thank you guys for having us.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we sign out the show the same way. We'll go around the horn. We'll start with me, then to Dave, then to Justus, and then Jake. We just sign out with a simple "Go Bills." So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Bills country, let's ride.
Are we having fun yet?